Okay. Still have a couple quick things to accomplish on our agenda, starting with mayor's comments.
We have public comment first.
Oh, sorry. Back. Flip the page, I guess. Let's go to public comment. Sorry. This is your opportunity to address the council on any item, any topic. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes and state your name for the record.
Good evening, Stephen Van Wagner once again. I've been meeting with Ogden City about Ogden School District vacant land since April 2022. I'm disappointed that there was not more leadership from the administration earlier in the year. I'm disappointed because while 100% in support of tonight, this was rushed. Our council just saved our citizens from the administration's proposal to develop this space, open space, with more subdivisions. If not for the council's thoughtful deliberation and willingness to act, the administration's public proposal of letting Grandview go to private developers would have occurred tonight. If our council was not willing to take the time to listen to us at these meetings, the other two sites, the administration had connected funding that would have required building subdivisions to the capacity of the code. With all the plans identifying needed park expansion going back 12 years, how were parklands not part of the discussion by the mayor's office? Any plan by the city to justify building on vacant school lands or facilitating others to develop that land should be considered off limits. The city staff should be actively collaborating with the Ogden School District to utilize any lands that are surplus as open park space first, before considering subdivisions. It seems we have no negotiating on our behalf. If so, we would have saved the taxpayers millions of dollars for purchasing these properties twice. Now more serious, I need to set the record straight on some things coming from this building. Stephen Van Wagner does not make money and is not paid under any capacity to lead Ogden soccer. I give where I live. Number two, Ogden Soccer is not one person. There is a bigger community vision to Ogden Soccer. Number three, Ogden Soccer is owned by the youth. We all work for them for free. We have been receiving copies of text since spring of 2022 stating that Ogden City was going to shut down Ogden Soccer. This August, the administration demanded a new charge for Ogden Soccer to use fields. This demand was sent in August, days before the start of the soccer season. We were being asked to pay for each participant of the visiting team to play our kids at home. With a terrified Ogden City staff, fearful of being fired, and now a local nonprofit serving the kids concerned of retribution for trying to save this property for parks, I'm asking for formal oversight by this branch of our government to look into the administration's possible abuse of power or attempt to crush local volunteer organizations with ambiguous interpretations of the ordinance that are entrusted with the administration to carry out on behalf of this council and our citizens. Who is protecting us little people from the executive branch? Lastly, though I'm often asked to run for mayor and last week offered a substantial funding to explore a bid, I am not interested in running for mayor. Please quit telling people that I'm running for mayor just to be valid and all the other things that are coming out of this building. Please stop. Unless you take the time to know me and understand my why, do not undermine my motives or my integrity.
Thank you, Steve. Next.
Hello, my name is Al Jones. I'd like to bring a little joy here. It's very nice to hear some S words that isn't shellac. Hey, you guys have a real tough job. I really applaud you. Everyone comes to here and, you know, mostly bitches and whines, mind my language, and demands and do things and everything. And
I'm supposed to tell you not to use those kinds of words. FYI.
It's very, I know it's a very difficult job, and I applaud you all, and I thank you for sitting there. I know there's not a lot of money here and you know, it's a really tough job, but I love Ogden. a lot of people love Ogden. I really applaud the fact that everyone came here tonight, as much to your chagrin, maybe. I like to see involvement, and I know it makes for a long night, and I advocate for more people coming because I always meet people here every time I come. So it's very good. But I'm in Ogden. My family's from Ogden. My grandparents are from Ogden. I love Ogden. Ogden is an extremely unique place. When I was a little kid, I didn't understand how much I liked Ogden, and I have seen towns and cities all over the United States and all over the world. Ogden has more potential than any other place I've ever been. And it takes leadership to maintain that. And what makes Ogden unique is that Ogden is unique. We have diversity. We have just lots of really good things going for us. We don't want to be like any other town. We can't solve today's problems with yesterday's solutions. We have to solve today's problems with tomorrow's solutions. I know that coming up, we've got a lot of work to do on a lot of these projects that have been going on for a while now. And we really need to slow down and look at some solutions to solve these problems on how to connect all of these projects together. We have the stockyards that need to be connected to Swift. We need Swift to be connected to the Union Station. We need Union Station to be connected to Wonderblock. We need Wonderblock to be connected to 9 Rails. We need 9 Rails to be connected with Rite Aid. So we got a lot of work ahead of us, and I know you guys are going to get a lot of grief coming up, but I applaud you for all the work that you do, and I hope we can all come to a solution for the best of Ogden going forward.
Thanks. Al, we got to talk on our way walking out the other night, and I found you to be quite a joyful man. So thank you for sharing joy here.
I tried.
We are jammed up when that's our jam. Okay, next.
Hi, my name is Scott Richards. My wife Tina and I are the directors of the Ogden Family Search Center on Grant and 22nd. And I have some concerns about the paid parking initiative. At the Family Search Center, we have a small parking lot, about 12, 13 spaces. And we routinely run into problems with folks parking there, even though we have signs that say, please don't park here if you're not coming to the center. When there's an event going on at the event center across the way, a lot of people will park in our parking lot just because it's a few feet closer. And I worry that when that parking structure becomes paid parking, we'll have a much bigger problem. Everything we do there at the center is for free. We don't charge anybody for anything. Everything is done with volunteers, and our volunteers need a place to park, and they've been parking in the parking structure so that our patrons can park in the parking lot. So I'm wondering what kind of provisions might be made for that. I'm sure that other small business owners who have a small parking lot are going to struggle with the same issue if they're in that area. So I would ask the council to have some sort of a plan in mind for that to help us. I don't really want to be the parking police at the Family Search Center. But I'm not sure how that's going to all pan out once that structure becomes paid parking. So please consider our needs with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Angel Castillo, Ogden resident. There was a misconception during the last public comment that we're talking. There was a gentleman who said, y'all seem to have an easy job, sign things. And what people don't really see if they're not here all the time or if they haven't served in a similar capacity on a different board or a committee. Your job sucks. I mean, you have $200-300 worth, or 200-300 pages worth of deck you have to go through, plus you have real jobs, plus you have people calling you, texting you that you have to explain things, and it's a hard thing, but it's a service thing. And I get why you do it. And I honor that, and I want you to know that I know how hard your job is. And it's also really challenging when you are going through some issues with community trust. And I applaud you for having the conversations that you're having in the work session. I believe transparency is key, and it's challenging, and there are some things happening. But I specifically wanted to call back to the hotel apartment where the number of rooms is in play, and that I'm not so sure that we should be making decisions about something that isn't supported by a market study. I ran into this in the Planning Commission a lot. I'd have people like, well, no, who's going to live in an 800 square foot apartment? No, it has to be 3 bedrooms. When we had a developer sitting at the table who he paid like $30,000 or $40,000 for a market study for an industry expert to tell him, this many of this unit, this many of this unit, this is what your market supports. And that's what they bring to the bank to get financing. Market studies are how buildings are built in a smart way that isn't fiscally risky. And that's what I want to talk about with what's happening with the Wonder Block. I'm a big fan of strong towns. You pay to have Joe Minicozy do a study with Urban 3. Listen to the podcast. TIF is a great thing if it's used like a scalpel instead of a sledgehammer. But one of the most important things that you 3 champions is that you don't give away TIF without making sure you've designated money to set aside for infrastructure where there's nothing happening. That's part of it. This isn't me. This is like planners that have been doing this for ages. I'm not anti-density. I'm not anti this project. I am anti-doing $120 million without a market study that says this has legs, this will work. Because if a project doesn't work without TIF, it's not a good project that has legs. It should be just enough to take it over the line.
Thank you. Next.
All right, Travis Pate, obviously still from Ogden. Yeah. The dynamic that I see with regards to the care and passion that on the last agenda item, I've seen individuals, including myself, that come and have that passion for their particular project that they're speaking for. And I just like the courtesies of the general plan provision, pro, general plan provision against, and hear why the administration would say what we're doing. It's simply the skill of what Doug Spienhauer, my English professor at Weber State, said, argument. So many things that come before this body without the presentation of an argument. It's simply, here's what we have. Union Station funding and purchase of the agreement was last week was a perfect example. This is the agreement. And I thought, well, we have 3 more years. So we can negotiate and we can see the terms. We can see some of those other aspects. We have the opportunity for market study and market analysis, those types of things. But what are we doing with that property as soon as it's ours? Are we gifting it again to a developer? Or have you guys enacted ordinances that prevent the free gifting of RDA property, or through that, once that board's organized again, and saying, each sale should come back to us. A request for proposal versus a request for qualifications. We have some amazing group of individuals that are qualified for development, but the 23rd to 24th Porter Avenue, is that the best use? 28 townhomes shoehorned into a development and we gift them the property. I had spoken years ago, the RDA trust should be a revolving loan fund That money, yes, we can gift you the property right now, but over time through the taxes and everything else, that's going to come back. It's going to go into more RDA money that we can then afford to projects that couldn't be done otherwise. If you look at the history of the RDA with regards to acquisition of property and implementation of property, it's got a fairly poor track record through the 70s and into the 80s. And yet then even some properties come back and we redevelop again. 24th Street's a perfect example. There's now some beautiful townhomes on 22nd Street. There's some beautiful townhomes now on property that we already owned once, and we just didn't do it right the first time. And so these are disposable things that, oddly enough, I'd spoken about this building, the initial David Eccles City Hall next door. Right at the dedication, they said, this city's going to grow. This building's not going to be. We'll need a bigger, more majestic building. Look what we got. And yet, sadly, I wish we had kept the Carnegie Library and that building and restored and infilled. Facadectomies, whatever you want to call it. But there's some dynamics, like I said, that need to come back to the public trust of a board that decides, not just a simple executive director.
Thanks, Travis. Thank you. I think we have the rest of the story tonight.
Yes. Hi again.
Welcome back.
My name's Teresa Bramwell, and I've been here for many weeks fighting and pleading for my private property rights in the scope of redevelopment. And I've been in this position before. I started a story last week about my home that I grew up in on Canyon Road. When they put Monroe through, there was a little strip left over that was owned by Ogden City. My father tried to buy it to add it to our land because it was attached seamlessly, and it was sold to a developer. So I want you to know how our farm became the ugliest fourplexes that have ever been built in the history of this world. And it wasn't us. We fought it every step of the way. But Ogden City facilitated it. It would have never happened if it was just the developer. The developer was handed on a silver platter through Ogden City's actions our property. And it happened through code enforcement. So we had a farm. We had horses. The first thing that came in the mail, we're making your horses illegal. You can keep them as long as they're here, but as soon as there's not a horse on this property, you can never have another property. You can never have another horse on the property. So that went for 10 years. We still had horses on the property. Then we got a letter saying, sorry, we're reneging on that agreement. Now we're just telling you, you can't have horses. You must sell your horses by this day. Those were my horses. Sorry. The next thing was the rabbit hutch. Then we got a notice for the rabbit hutch. We don't allow rabbit hutches on properties. Take it down. So the rabbit hutch came down. The next thing was the shed that had been there for probably 50 years. They said, we don't allow sheds that are made out of wood. Your shed is wood. Your shed has to come down. Then the next notice was, you haven't illegally built in your front porch. You didn't get a permit to build in your front porch 20 years ago when you did that. So now you need to tear down the portion of your front porch that you built in. And it was just harassment, harassment, harassment. Eventually, the developer got the property. We were forced to sell the developer our property and leave. Because Ogden City didn't want me, didn't want us, didn't want our farm. They wanted fourplexes. They wanted apartment people. They didn't want people who participated in the rodeos or the parades. Thank you.
Mrs. Grandma, do you want a tissue?
Thank you.
Thanks, Teresa. Next.
Hi there, my name is Margaret Bojarski. My husband and I have just moved to Ogden in about the past year. We've come in with the big influx of jobs, and we had the opportunity to live anywhere between Salt Lake and Logan. We picked Ogden because of the incredible community that we've seen here. It's a really unique infrastructure, a cool town. We like the people. Clearly, the people here are passionate about where they live. One thing that I would like to say is about the paid parking initiative. I understand that there is revenue to gain there, but I think in doing so, you're going to lose accessibility to the community. So you heard from an entire demographic today that I'm not a part of. You heard from young children and families with kids. They want access to open space for parks. I mean, I use those as well, but especially like the sporting events and things like that. I'm not a part of that in this community. What I am a part of is going to the shows, the entertainment, the food, the Ogden Raptors. I live in the 25th Street area. I love being in this downtown area. I think by asking for paid parking, you're reducing the accessibility of this demographic. So just like with the open spaces that are available, there's an incurred cost there. By not asking for paid parking, you're losing a revenue source. I understand that, but I do think that you've heard from 100 people tonight on the value of the culture that Ogden has. So I just wanted to bring that up, that understand there's a cost benefit analysis there, but I came here for the culture, and I think you would lose that if you asked for paid parking.
Thank you. Did you say Bojarski?
Yes.
Welcome to Ogden Bojarski's. Before you go, where'd you come from?
We just moved here from Cape Canaveral, Florida.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was just worried you were going to say Missoula, Montana.
Oh, no.
Okay. Thanks. Welcome, you guys.
Thank you.
I only make comments about the Grizz to see Brandon's face. He freaks out every time I do it. Okay. Anyone else?
My name is Stephanie Vaughn, and similarly, we recently moved to Ogden. We bought our very first home in the city. This is where I grew up, and even though we spent a bit of time living in North Carolina, we decided this was the place that we wanted to set down roots. And when I see new development coming in, I care a lot about the future planning we're putting in of how are we setting up our community to support us and our children better years down the road. I really care about sustainable urban growth and especially mixed use walkable growth. For the Wonder Block, I would love to see, I know this is part of the plan already, but to ensure there is economic development in there where people can come and enjoy the space, be able to go to a coffee shop, to a bakery, to a bookstore, and create a third space for the community to come together in. Third spaces have been lost over the last couple decades. They used to be in skating rinks and rollerblading and, all sorts of places. And our society has become more and more isolated from each other. So the more places we have to come together as a community is really important, and especially how important it is to build walking into our city and have a walkable city. So if you live somewhere, you can walk to where you work, you can walk to a coffee shop, you can walk to things you enjoy doing. Not only does this support the health of our community, but it also decreases traffic congestion. So right now we already have a problem with too many cars in our city, too many cars piled up between stoplights. And so the more walkable we make our city, the less we reduce traffic congestion, the less parking problems we're going to have in the long term. So I know that this is already on the radar for Ogden City. I believe that there was a study done by a group in North Carolina to advocate for mixed use development, but I really want to come here and express my personal support for it. I think it is essential for our community to build mixed use and to build walkable communities, not only for us, but for our children, for our health, for our streets, and especially the preservation of natural spaces as well. I highly support that as well. Thank you.
Thanks. I didn't catch your name.
Stephanie Vaughn.
Vaughn, thank you. Welcome to O-Town. Okay, anyone else? Okay, online, we'll go to David Timmerman. Can you hear us, David? Officer Timmerman, you there? Okay, maybe David, if you can hear us, we'll come back to you. Let's try Heath Sato, and then we'll try David again shortly.
Heath Sato, Ogden resident. It's getting late here in Florida, so I'll do my best to stay on topic. Tonight, you could hear in the first public comment from Stephen Wagner, I believe, the anger in his voice. You've heard that anger from me many times, and I know many of you have just tuned me out because it's easier. Not all of you, but the mayor stopped acting like I even exist a long time ago. But that anger you heard comes from the same place. The citizens often feel their representatives are more concerned about getting along with the administration and getting their pet projects met than living up to the title they hold, being a representative of the citizens. I agree with what we heard from Al tonight. Ogden is unique. And because of that, we want to keep it that way. We don't want to develop it into a smaller copy of a Salt Lake or Denver. We've had a mayor that, face it, hasn't connected with the people of Ogden in any meaningful way since he last campaigned. I only saw one elected person show up for the Wonder Block event at Union Station, Sharon Nadolski. Sorry to keep highlighting you, but I recognize when someone actually shows up. I'm tired of hearing our mayor and CAO redirect public comments and concerns as some sort of attack on the staff under them. They work hard, they say. Yeah, we know. That's not our issue. Drop that. The buck stops with leadership. We just ask that you genuinely listen to the people you represent. I'm finally hearing some recognition in work sessions that you're not being fed all the information you need in a timely fashion. You're rushed into decisions that are expected to be just rubber stamped. We have a division of government for a reason. You are not expected to merely work together. You're expected to balance one another, to push back when you see that the people that elected you feel they are not represented. You are all good people, and you all want what you feel is best for Ogden, but that means going beyond being a rubber stamp. Just listen. Hear us. It's important. Thank you.
Thank you, Heath. Jim Greer.
Good evening, Council. Are you able to hear me okay?
Sure can.
Good evening. I have listened for the past couple hours and am just so inspired by so many of the comments that I heard this evening in the earlier session. And I just had one comment specific to the Wonder Block project I wanted to share, that I personally am very excited about that redevelopment project and that part of downtown. I did go to the open house workshop several nights ago, saw the renderings, and just really impressed with all the work that has gone into what the future of that block can be. And I wanted to make you aware that I have an interest in history, and I've written about a 5-page paper, just very informal paper about the history of the owner and entrepreneur of the Brown Ice Cream building, which I understand is the one building that's still standing. And so I plan to, I think that perhaps there'd be some way to build a sculpture or do something to honor the legacy of John and Jane Brown. So I'll submit my paper to the redevelopment agency for their consideration. But I do think they were an amazing family. He moved to Ogden in 1900 and passed away in 1944. And that Brown ice cream business was in the family for a half a century. So quite an inspiring early pioneer that we can, I think, learn about. So I wanted to share that comment with you this evening. Thank you for all that you're doing.
Thank you, Jim. Amelia Jones.
Hello, this is Amelia Jones speaking. This is just a short comment because is this part of the meeting about fact? Are we going into fact finding about Wonder Block next?
Yep, that'll be next.
Okay, because that's all I really want to say is I just really think that there's a lot to be worked, a lot of questions to be answered about Wonder Block. And I am just looking forward to getting them answered. So thank you.
All right. Thanks, Amelia. Hang tight for that. Okay, David Timmerman, let's try it one more time. David? Nope. What is it? Star 8, 6. What is it? Star 6. Okay. Sorry, David, we're not hearing you, man. Sorry, David, we'll have to catch you on the next one. I don't know. Okay, anyone else? Nope. Okay, comments from the mayor?
Nothing tonight, thanks.
Comments from council? Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thanks. A motion by Councilmember Jaberka, second by Councilmember Ritchie to adjourn. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we're adjourned. We'll continue in our work session here shortly. Turn into the continuing joint work session of December 13th, 2022. Let the record reflect all council members are present. Starting with Executive Director Janine Eller-Smith. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Nanowski.
We're good. It's a joint session. We got this. We got this. Yeah.
So tonight we're here to get the continued work session for a fact finding about the proposed Wonder Block development and pay parking system. Whoops. So I'm just going to do a really quick introduction, and then CED, Brandon Cooper primarily, will make a presentation about Wonder Block and the proposed pay parking system. And then the floor will be open for a question answer period from people either in the chambers here or online. And I'll let you know a little bit about that in a minute. So in 2016, the city or the RDA purchased the Wonder Bread plant. And in 2019, and following that, there was some demolition and environmental remediation. The board created the Continental CRA that would be able to do some redevelopment and use some tax increment in the area. In 2020, there was an initial approval of an LTDA, a land transfer and development agreement with J. Fisher Companies. And then that started lots of action on the part of the developer. And then on November 15th, the council held an initial fact finding and an open house. And then December 8th, there was an administrative open house. Since that November 15th meeting, the council and the administration have been gathering a lot of questions. Those have come either through direct contact through you, the elected officials, and through staff, through email and voicemail. We reviewed social media platforms and comments, even looked at comments on the standard articles that were published. You've heard public comment in the council meetings, and there's been comments from the open houses. And so the administration has taken all of those questions, and we work together to kind of formulate a presentation that will sort of answer most of those questions, we hope. So after tonight, the next step will be a public hearing on the proposed bond issues for both the city, the RDA, and the NBA. and those will all be on January 10th. Initial meeting will start at 6 p.m. There'll be the 3 meetings. So that will be the public hearing. And so that will be an opportunity for additional comments. In the meantime, we're still open for comments and questions. So you can contact the council office by voice message at 629-8158. You can call our office if you want to talk to a real person, 629-8153. We have an option on our website at that ogdencity.com/public input. And then you can also contact the council at citycouncil@ogdencity.com. So with that, I will turn the time over to Brandon Cooper.
Thanks, Janine. Chair, members of the board, good evening. I was chuckling during the last meeting a bit. I got a random text from some folks who were watching the previous meeting, and all it said was, "Wow, dude." So kudos to you for all of your hard work. And wow, I think is a good statement. And thanks to Janine. Janine sometimes probably feels like she has a tiger by the tail because so often she's the one who has to wrangle all the information from the council as well as make sense of all the information from the administration and present it to you and provide it for you in meaningful ways. So she and her staff do a great job. We're grateful for her. As she mentioned, there's a lot to cover tonight. I will try to be as quick but also as slow as possible and as necessary. A lot of the discussion tonight will be about stuff we've already presented. I think there's some benefit of sharing some of the same information that has been in some of the other meetings before. There's some new information that we've never communicated publicly, so that'll be fun. And then as Janine mentioned, there are a number of comments that we've been collecting together, and we seek to look at those specifically and answer them. And then after I'm done, I believe we'll open it up and we'll be available, myself and my team, and we also have the developer here tonight, will be available to answer any question that might arise. So some of this might look familiar to, and part of this first section would be a presentation that we've given before. I like to start briefly with what authority and purpose we have in even being here and proposing these types of projects and things in the first place. As I've mentioned previously, we are governed by the Ogden City General Plan. That is the land use and planning document that governs how we move forward as a city. In that are about 18 community plans. Those are broken down into more smaller plans that are neighborhood based. And one of those plans was the Central Business District Plan. It was an aged plan. It hadn't been significantly upgraded for about a decade. And so we sought to update that and to redo it through our Make Ogden process, which I'll talk about in a minute. We also rely a lot on consultants and professional studies. Contrary to popular belief, we do a number of market studies and other feasibility studies and analysis to inform our decisions and the proposals that we bring to you. Also, we are acting under the authority of Utah State Code 17C. That's what establishes the redevelopment agency and gives us the rules in which we operate under, in addition to the Ogden City Administrative Policy that's both applicable to us as city employees and RDA employees. That's really the authority. The purpose in which we're acting is really that of placemakers. We feel that it is the role of government, in essence, to establish a sense of place, to create a foundation in which our citizens can prosper. And that happens in a lot of meaningful ways, but certainly it includes reinventing public spaces as the heart of the community, increasing the density of jobs, housing, pedestrian activity, public transportation, restaurants, stores, all the things that we enjoy and value in our life. And really, at the heart of all of that is building our city's capacity for sustainable economic vitality. We kind of follow these 9 qualities that make a great city as it informs our work as placemakers. a central marketplace or a distinct downtown. Ogden City is unique. You've heard a lot of comments about that, and you probably share those sentiments. We're unique in a lot of ways, but one of which is that we have a traditional downtown that has operated for a long, long time. We're the oldest incorporated city in the state. And other cities are rushing to create downtowns. Some of the cities in Weber County today are going through master planning activities to create a downtown. Cities in Davis County, in Salt Lake, they're all rushing to gain what we already have. And so that is very unique and important. A distinct image goes along with that. There was a Fox News article or video, I guess, report just the other day about how unique 25th Street is specifically. And so we do have a distinct image that I think a lot of people really value and use as our identity. A compact, dense building pattern. We're going to get to that a little bit more in a minute, but that is something, again, that flies in the face of how Utah has developed over the last few decades in terms of urban sprawl and continual expansion. We have a downtown fabric and a grid system that allows us to maximize our effective land use. And so that, again, is a quality that we adhere to. A concentration and variety of interesting housing, understandable and attractive street system, plazas, parks, open spaces, much of what you've heard about tonight. A sense of permanence. We get that a lot with our historical elements and the idea that we've been here for a long time and will continue to be here for a much longer time. A soul and visionary leader. So those are the 9 qualities that we seek to employ in terms of this concept of making a great city. And we measure that greatness using these 6 metrics. And I would love to have taken credit for this, but this is actually something that we've adopted through a national metric system. And I won't go over all of this, but this is how we look at the measurement of our greatness as it relates to those 9 qualities that I just mentioned. Underneath all of that is the question of how do we create an economic base? If you noticed, these things are really outputs. Much of what you've heard tonight is an output of a strong economic base, the expenditure of money on parks and services and things that our community needs. Those are all elements and outputs of an economic base. So as an economic developer and with my staff of professionals, we are constantly worried about how do we continue to grow the economic vitality of the community. And we formulated that in a question. The city needs a comprehensive vision to guide growth and development, specifically in its downtown, and to maintain and grow its tax base, which will improve the long-term fiscal health of the community and the ability for us to meet basic service needs like parks and like open space. So we've asked the question, how can Ogden strategically evolve its downtowns, again, specifically, but this isn't just quarantined to the downtown. This is a general economic principle. But how can we evolve our core to take advantage of our historical and natural assets and to become a nexus for business and employment attraction, residential growth, and recreational and cultural activity that increases the value of the land and contributes to the long-term health of the community? That really is the functional question of all the other things that you're being asked to do. I've been coming to city council now for about 15 years, and it amazes me the difference between meeting to meeting and sometimes in the same meeting where you are often getting asked to do contradictory things. I think, Marcia, you mentioned it before. At one point, you might be asked to focus on housing. The next, you might be asked to focus on open space. The next, you might be asked to focus on utilities. And so as a council and as an administration, this is the question in terms of a comprehensive approach to community building that we should be asking ourselves. And it's the one we're proposing to you tonight and throughout all of the things that we've proposed to you as an RDA. Everyone's familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs when it comes to self-actualization of an individual. We believe communities are no different. And so at the base of that pyramid, just like in one that applies to the human condition, it starts with the basics. And the basic for any community is its ability to deal appropriately with its real estate and land use. That's why a general plan is established, as I've mentioned. And that's why having professionals and interested parties such as developers and business owners and entrepreneurs and homeowners invested in that land use is so important. And from that land use and real estate allowance, you get the other things that finally allows you to have things like social equity and services. Those are things that are built on top of things like transportation and historical and cultural assets. And so we subscribe to this wholeheartedly, and it's at the basis of all the things that we're presenting to you tonight, and at the heart of the Wonder Block project. So as we've asked the question of how do we evolve the downtown and use the 9 elements of a great city and use this thesis of this hierarchy of needs being based on how well we use our real estate and land, we have come up with the Make Ogden plan. The Make Ogden was, as Janine mentioned, I think in your dates there, Make Ogden was the downtown master plan adopted in 2020. It is the vision that we've established for Ogden's future as it relates to the land use in the downtown, and the downtown being important as the economic engine for the growth of the rest of Ogden. Make Ogden is based on a significant amount of input that was received over a period of almost 2 years. There was open house after summit, after walking tour, after survey. And I don't believe, again, in my time here, that we've spent the same amount of time developing this amount of public feedback and engagement. And so we're obviously very happy with the plan. It was adopted by you all back then. As I mentioned, it's a 25-year vision for the downtown, and the metrics included are 38% increase in walkability, 92% increase in job density, 476% increase in housing density, and 175% increase in taxable value per acre. All of that is, again, meant to be the base of that pyramid in terms of how well we're using our most valuable land and how much that land is contributing to the overall health and well-being of the services that go into making Ogden great. Episode 1 is the first episode in the series of 4 that span that 25-year period. And in that episode, with the goal of 900 new housing units and 1,680 new jobs, the Wonder Block was born. It's not the only project in episode 1, but it's most significant and most catalytic in terms of its size and ability to generate the heat that's necessary to scale up to other projects. The throwing of a boulder into a pond not only creates a giant splash, but the ripple effect of that can be seen across the pond in most cases. And so we believe Wonder Block is that large boulder, at least for episode 1. So the logical question is, how did we get here? And Janine's mentioned a few of these, so I'll go through them rather quickly. In 2016 era, we were negotiating with what was then Flower Foods after they recently purchased the Continental Bakery. It was about 185,000 square foot of what seemingly was one building, but as you can see from the rooftop is many, many buildings. We tore that down. Soon after that, here's an aerial of that. And in the project that we're proposing with Wonder Block, we're also including the state-owned project up there that's associated with the courts in the black box. There's the demo that I just mentioned in 17 and 18. And in 18 and 19, we set out to implement the Continental Community Reinvestment Area, which is, as you know, a TIF district, which allows the redevelopment agency to collect the TIF that is generated from any new project in this area for a period of time and use it to reinvest into that area. Also in 2017, we began to do some conceptual planning as a staff, looking at the highest and best use for the site, looking at what was possible within just the realm of that TIF district and the tax increment that was afforded us in the budget that was approved. We looked at we looked at some of the 9 elements or the 9 qualities that we've deemed that make a great city. Keep in mind, in 2017, Make Ogden wasn't around yet. And so we were using those metrics at the time to look at site studies such as this. This is primarily an apartment complex. You can see the brown ice cream building there in the upper right, along with the district court building. So this is an example of some of the planning that we did then. We also started reaching out to developers as is allowed for in the agency authority. And so one of the renderings and one of the proposals we received in 2017 from an interested developer was this thing. I'll let you decide how you feel about it on your own. But it wasn't conducive to the vision and the overall highest and best use of the property that we felt. And so that led us to do some additional development design and additional discussion with other developers. And we started to expand this vision of housing. We started to look at linkages a little more closely with that north and south connection to the back of 25th Street. We looked at additional uses on the site other than just housing. It was about that time that we started to engage in discussions with JF Capital in the form of J. Fisher Companies. And it was at that time that we entered into what we call administratively as an exclusive negotiation agreement. This is not a document that the council approves. This is a document that's administrative. It's essentially a workout document, meaning that we hope to achieve this goal, and we're going to set out the terms and conditions of how we work together to achieve that goal. And really, that's what that document allowed for. 2020 came, and Make Ogden was adopted. The Wonder Block site was put on hold until Make Ogden was adopted, and then in 2021, Wonder Block planning was resumed with the JF Fisher Companies taking lead, putting a summit together and really marshaling some of the best minds across the country. There were design workshop was there. We had Kimley Horn, which is a parking consultant that we've used on other things. We had retail strategists, real estate brokers, all kinds of other professionals, architects, as many people as we could think of that would inform what ultimately the Wonder Block project needed to be. As I mentioned, we've already studied it multiple times prior to this. And so we engaged the help of those professionals, and that's when Wonder Block, as you know it, was born. And we feel that it embodies the heart of Ogden's past, where it meets Ogden's future. And you've seen this drawing. This is the 2D site plan, which describes the residential buildings, the parking structure there in blue, which there's another parking structure adjacent to it underneath that swimming pool that allows for additional stalls a bit closer to Lincoln and 25th Street. That promenade going north and south became a key element, something that does allow for that community area, or that third space that was commented on, a gathering point and a connection point to 25th Street, which was a major goal of our planning efforts to back into 25th Street, solve some of the problems that they had there along the alley of the state court building, and to really create one neighborhood, not to compete with 25th Street, but to augment 25th Street in a way that wasn't taking away from its historical and cultural value, but adding to it and allowing people to park once and experience the entire neighborhood and have a unique experience with new retailers and new events, as well as old retailers, local retailers, and accessing some of the history. So as you put all three of those ideas together, you can see kind of the evolution. As you would say, maybe if you squint at it, that it all looks the same, but it truly is not the same in terms of its economic outputs. It's not the same as its community connectivity. It's not the same as enhancing 25th Street. We feel that the Wonder Block proposal on the bottom left there really represents all of the vision that we had in Make Ogden and all of the vision that we had in terms of a city trying to capture what's unique about us. Here's just a laundry list of some of those elements that you saw in the site plan. 354 residential units. These are market rate units. I'll speak to that a bit more in a minute. 100,000 square feet of office building. 50,000 square feet of ground floor street level retail with an additional 20,000 square foot of a grocery store. There's a hotel that fronts 25th Street. And again, those amenity spaces and that parking that really brings everything together and utilizes our land in a meaningful and efficient way. Here's a vision of that today. If you were to stand on the corner of 26th and Grant, that's what you would see. If you stood there, hopefully in the next maybe 3 years, that's what you would see, elevated a little bit, of course. And so we're very satisfied with this design. We're very satisfied with the effort that's been put into this design. SAR is the architect of record. They're an architect out of Colorado. They've been around, I believe, for 75 years, and they're award winning. And so we're very grateful for them to have taken the time to study with us the value of Ogden and try to manifest it in what's being shown here. Here's some other pictures looking down 26th Street into what would be the parking structure, that black and white crazy graphic thing. Behind the white box is the parking structure. And so that's mainly where the parking would enter and exit from, next to the Brown Ice Cream Building. Here's again another look down 26th Street. Interior space, that space that's so important in terms of its programmatic value, how it relates to the residents that might live there and the businesses on the ground floor, how all that works again with 25th Street. Those things were the basis of our thinking as we approached how to design the site and how to maximize value and experience. Here's again another view looking north towards what kind of is the access point of this whole promenade. It's that art wall that can house a water feature if that's prudent. It certainly can house digital art that can be changed and used for events, concerts, art exhibits. There's also some thought of using water on the ground plane, something that is really unique and enjoyable while you're there. And if you need to use that space for a different venue, then it shuts off and it's a flat plane that can be used for a concert or for a food truck in this case. Again, here's some of that connection space as people move in between buildings. It's meant to be quaint. It's meant to be cozy. It's meant to be explorable so that as you're moving through the space, there's unique opportunities to discover things that might not be visible in a single view. The materials are all high quality, high end, durable materials that represent the elements of Ogden's past, but also look towards what Ogden's future would be. Here's a night view of that art wall as you see it, an idea of it being programmed for a concert in the evening. So let's talk about the investment. This is roughly $188 million without the parking. I'll get to that in just a minute. But the vertical construction of the project is $188 million. It's proposed to be a joint venture between the redevelopment agency and the developer, J. Fisher Companies. This is not unlike our joint venture with the Boyer Company out at BDO. But it is different, and we'll highlight the differences here in a minute. It's an investment required by both parties. I'll cover that more in detail in a minute. And the investment that's being proposed from the RDA does not require an increase in property or sales tax to make that investment. And I'll highlight that here in just a minute. So that's how that breaks out in terms of the overall look, $124 million from the developer, the $64 million from the redevelopment agency, which would be obtained by the issuance of a bond. The bond is a tax increment, and it's a tax increment bond backed by sales tax. What that means is that we're looking at the future receipts of tax increment that are generated solely by this project alone and monetizing that through a bond, meaning that we're using those future receipts of property tax to pay the debt service on the bond with a backstop of sales tax. But it's not a general increase to citizens of Ogden in either property tax or sales tax. The way that our investment breaks out is in three ways. $36.5 million comes from BDO lease revenue, which is investment return money. It's money that we receive, as you know, from our partnership with Boyer. And that money is unrestricted tax money. It's specifically not property tax or sales tax. It's business income. And we receive a portion of that every year. And so we would capitalize that to pay $36.5 million of the bond. 21.5 would come from the tax increment that I mentioned. Again, just the taxes paid by the property, by the project. And then we've received about $6.5 million in federal and state grants that we would use to go for that. So that's how our $64 million is compiled. It does not raise taxes for the citizens, and technically, aside from the grant money, you could argue that is federal tax money, but it's not Ogden City specific tax revenue being used for that. Here's another view of that. There's been some questions about the $64 million bond amount versus what might be in a parameters resolution that you would see on the 10th of January. The par amount is different than the amount that would be given to the construction budget of the project, and that's because there's other fees associated with issuing a bond, and so that's all factored in to that $75 million. So the first time that you all heard about this as a board was the first time this was formally presented to you as a board was when we shared with you the land transfer and development agreement. That's our operating or our functional agreement that usually works out all of the elements of a land transfer and the reciprocal development that's required by the city as a result of that land transfer. That was adopted by the board on December 8th of 2020. In that agreement, at that time, we were contemplating a master lease for the office building. We were contemplating a parking agreement because we knew that the parking was going to be an element. We were working through agreements with the state court, and we were working out an incentive agreement with the developer. So as you approved the LTDA, as that's called, that your approval of that land transfer was subject to your future approval of those other agreements that are listed there. As we've gone on, you can see that that's almost 2 years ago. A lot has happened in the course of planning these types of developments with this many stakeholders and this much complexity. Things have changed. And so what will be presented to you at least by January 10th would be your approval of a restated land transfer and development agreement. So that would be the same type of document. It would be the transfer of the land with additional conditions, but those conditions would change. No longer are we doing a master lease for the office. That is no longer necessary given our new financing structure. The court agreement is generally the same document, but it includes the...
Brandon, you just said something really important that we've been hearing from some people, that we are no longer guaranteeing occupancy.
That's right.
I just wanted to point that out because that's some comments that we've been hearing.
And this is the new part that I mentioned. The LTDA has been around since 2020. And so now we're bringing to you for the first time publicly that those terms have changed, and you'll see how those new terms work out in the new agreement. But we have scrapped the occupancy guarantee.
Sorry to disrupt your flow. I just didn't want that to get missed.
That's a good point. Thank you. Most of everything that was in the original development agreement has been kind of melded into the operating agreement. And the operating agreement is the joint venture agreement that is common to joint ventures. But in our case, it includes a financial arrangement that is unique to the city, even different than how we operate at BDO. So again, this is a joint investment made by us and the developer. We're so grateful to have a development entity like J.F. Fisher Company, who is well respected, that has significant experience, has a wonderful team, in addition to their design team, design workshop, and SAR, and all the consultants that they've hired. We're grateful to have them be willing to invest $122 million into our community. We're grateful to have Zions Bank or other lending partners that would be willing to loan on this project. We're grateful for our bond counsel and for our financial advisors that we rely on to help us understand the feasibility of all this. But all that culminates into this operating agreement that essentially sets out what's called a waterfall. And what that means is that there's an expected return by the developer that's stipulated. And then anything above and beyond that at the time of sale of the project or parts of the project, there's a participation rate that we've negotiated that allows the RDA to receive some or all of our investment money back. And that's all dependent upon the performance of the property over a period of time. So let's say that period of time is 10 years. If the project raises in value 100%, then that's obviously going to return the money back to the original investors, pay off debt, as well as give both JF Capital and the RDA a windfall benefit. And so that's unique again to our original deal, totally different, and not found in any other deal that we have in the city, not even with BDO. BDO, we get incremental lease revenue that we share. This one is meant to be captured at the full value of the project, where it's at its highest value, and it benefits both parties.
So, hey, before you go on, so it says January of 2023. When will we get those? So going into the holidays, lots of people probably want to take some time off.
Janine has put some serious deadlines on us for that reason specifically, and we're working really hard to get that done in December so that you all have as much time as you can have to review those.
Where it's changed quite a bit. I mean, I think we continue to talk about that give and take. And so, yeah.
You're absolutely right.
We also would have the option to extend the public hearing if we needed to.
But he wants to move it along. So sooner we get it, the better.
I understand the relationship of both of those things. So yes,
just trying to help.
We do want to move it along. Janine is a tough boss. So speaking of Janine, she did mention some of the things that we've done to talk about this project, to get public comment and feedback. So again, I want you to understand again that this is all rooted in the Make Ogden plan. And so we have extensive information and extensive feedback from the citizens relative to the future development of downtown, the relationship of that development with 25th Street, the importance of 25th Street to the Union Station, and how all of that is connected. A gentleman mentioned that he's seeking for kind of the thread that runs through all of those and how they're connected. And that's exactly how we think. We bring to you isolated projects often and seek approval for those isolated projects. But in all reality, they're all connected and they all work off of each other. So in any event, we have had a significant amount of public feedback, again, both at Make Ogden and with Wonderblock. We've tracked social media. We have website submissions on our websites as well as the council's website, open house events. And so from that, we have generated a list of questions. And so I'll try to get through these as quickly as I can. There are a number of them, and we tried to capture everybody's thoughts and feelings. So why did the RDA purchase the former Hostess Wonderblock or Wonderbread property, now Wonderblock? I covered this a little bit, but to ensure the important site was redeveloped to enhance and benefit the downtown, we purchased it in 2016, and the old building was demolished in 2017 to 2019. And our plan always was to deliver a property to someone who could invest in the site in a meaningful way and achieve our vision of its highest and best use and benefit to the community. Why is the RDA proposing to partner with a private developer to facilitate the Wonder Block? Again, some of this is a little bit redundant, but I think it's important to cover multiple times. So based on our Make Ogden plan, we envisioned a significant amount of high quality mixed use development that it had all kinds of uses, residences, retail, grocery, hospitality, all of the things that downtowns were built on. We contacted several developers in the process of doing that site design ourselves, and you saw some of the outcomes of their vision didn't quite fit with our vision. Private development investment alone, so just the funds from a private developer, is not sufficient for us to achieve the vision that we have and the maximum impact of the site. And I'll explain what that means as we go along. And so that's when we decided to utilize our ability to do direct negotiation to folks that we feel share the ability and the vision and the competency to achieve the goals that we have. And that doesn't always it's not always easy to find folks that are willing to make the sacrifices that we're asking from them. $122 million is a significant risk. It represents one of the largest, if not the largest risk that's been taken in the downtown, and since it was probably built. How did the RDA determine what developer to work with? I've mentioned this a number of times. We've talked about this in other meetings. We have generally three options available to us: public solicitation, direct negotiation, or unsolicited proposals. In this case, we considered several concepts from other developers. As I mentioned, none of them really hit the mark with us, and so we engaged with J.F. Fisher companies due to their reputation and their ability to perform. This is similar to how design build processes go when you build a building. Design build is a very fluid, responsive method to construct a building, and it allows an owner to actually use industry experience and industry knowledge to inform the design as it's moving along. And so a project like Wonder Block that's this complex, that has this many objectives, it was important for us to engage a development partner at the inception of the process, not at the end when we've designed it and then said, please, everyone just bid on this. We actually did that at the Ogden Riverbend. If you remember, in 2002, we designed a master plan that was essentially the law of the land. We codified it into an MU zone ordinance, and we were totally agnostic to the development community. We were totally agnostic to property owners. And so we have done pretty well considering that over the last decade or so, but that has proven to be difficult to manage as we've moved forward with development, because markets shift, financial situations shift, and we've had to make some changes to those documents. What would happen if the RDA did not pursue or engage in developing the empty site? Well, if you rewind all the way back to 2016 or even 2012, when Continental Bakery shut down, had we not pursued this, that would likely have been a factory. They would have shut the doors on Continental. That allowed use would have existed for at least another year in that same building. They probably would have desired to sell that to another manufacturing facility. It was a usable plant. They basically flipped the lights off and walked out. And so that plant could have been turned back on by another operator the very next day. And so had we not got engaged then, it could have very likely still been operating as a factory today in the heart of our downtown. As I mentioned, there's alternative development options. And so had any of those been pursued, so a traditional RFP, just asking the development committee to tell us what they thought the highest and best use was, that would have yielded probably one of those lesser projects that I've described. We most likely would not have been able to enhance the back of house issues that the businesses on 25th Street are experiencing related to trash pickup and other things that encumber some of those things. If you've been to the restaurants on 25th Street, some of them push their trash out the front instead of out the back because it was inaccessible at the time. And then again, we're seeking to build a high revving, sustainable economic engine that will drive the growth and meet the needs of the future expenses of the city. And so we wanted to make sure that our involvement supported that. Who will own Wonder Block? I mentioned that. It's a public-private development partnership between the RDA and the J. Fisher companies. We will both jointly own the property and the buildings in that joint venture, and they will operate everything except for the parking, which that is coming up in a few minutes. And if any of it is sold, all of it or any of it is sold, again, I mentioned how the financial benefit inures to the RDA through the stipulations that are agreed upon in the operating agreement, which you will have before you soon so that you can review. We've covered this a number of times. I don't know how more emphatically I can say this, that this is money that is either generated by the project itself or has been generated by other investment projects that bring a non-property tax or sales tax yield to us. And so none of the citizens' taxes will be affected directly by this project. Why is Wonder Block considered a better, more resilient project than some previous projects or potential projects? Wonder Block is interesting. It looks big on the pictures, but if you go across the street, it's a fairly small site. We're packing a lot in there. And because of that, it's truly a mixed use environment. Unlike even the Junction. The Junction is considered mixed use, but it has significantly less residential units at the Junction. This has 354. I believe the Junction's under 200. And so that 24-hour presence and that mass of people that has never existed on that site. Again, it was a factory. So we're introducing for the first time in its probably history, a significant amount of people that will be a benefit not only to the uses on Wonder Block, but 25th Street and other places in the downtown. The office building seems big, but 100,000 square feet in the context of the downtown is not big. So that helps diversify some of the use of the project. Whereas the Junction is largely just a shopping center. We have the Solomon Center and the movie theater, but the rest of it's largely shopping. So we think that this mix, again, is based on a high level of scrutiny and study by a number of professionals in the industry. We feel like this is the mixture that is going to support its economic vitality. Will the residential units be a higher quality market rate? The answer is, and then there's a statement there, that demographic is what is needed to support downtown businesses. And we absolutely agree with that. Our region's housing demand is forecasted to remain strong, especially in the rental market. We believe that the large scale apartment buildings that we're seeing pop up in so many places is the best suited in a downtown environment. We're actually going through some of our commercial zones and even some of our residential zone language to limit the number and size and scale of some of those apartments, because we do believe that that scale and density is best served in our downtown environment. So we want to push all that there and preserve our residential neighborhoods especially. A demographic with a discretionary income is necessary to support not only the businesses of Wonder Block, but all the businesses in downtown. And so that's what these housing units are seeking to support. And I'll talk about housing a bit more in a minute. Will the project result in gentrification and reduce affordable housing? So according to recent housing information well, let me go to this graphic, actually. This says it better. So this is the October 2022 Housing Affordability and Access Study that was commissioned by Weber County in conjunction with Wasatch Front Regional Council and the University of Utah. And I know it's kind of hard to read, but I'll read some of this for you because I think it's important. So a maximum affordable rents are assumed to be 30% of your annual median house income. So in that second paragraph, there was a 1,143 unit deficit of low and very low income rental units. So that 30%. Housing prices have changed since that time, so obviously that deficit's probably gotten larger, but the corresponding deficit is interesting. There's also a 3,000 unit deficit in the highest income brackets, which means greater than 100% AMI. So that means that if you can afford to live in a housing unit that is in the 100% AMI category, that you have a deficit of those types of housing units. And therefore, what the study finds is that the highest income bracket is consuming surplus units in the lower income bracket, meaning it's exacerbating that deficit because high income earners are now having to go to more affordable units to find a place to live because there just isn't anything in their price category. The third paragraph is equally interesting. Ogden provides 65% of the county's affordable housing, far more than anyone. And the next highest is Roy at 6.5. So Roy's affordable housing stock is 6.5 of the county's stock, and we're 65. And so that just, and they've summed it up better than anyone can. It is one of the 3 communities that provides more than its fair share of affordable housing regionally. And so for that reason, we are seeking additional market rate units because, as I mentioned before, our vision is that of community building. We know that right now, as we speak, there are over 300 affordable units being built today that would be occupiable much sooner than when Wonder Block comes online. We know that more affordable units are being pushed into the marketplace because that's one of the most suitable and accessible funding sources through low-income housing tax credits. So collectively and across the community, based on the fact that we already have a huge deficit of market rate units, we're actually eating into, at a faster pace, the affordable units. And so overall, we feel like this is a good balance, and it's consistent with our Quality Neighborhoods initiative. What is the long-term value, economic resiliency, and measurable success of the project? We could actually have a whole discussion about this in terms of what these types of catalytic projects do for a community like ours. But essentially, by raising the standards of this project, and you saw how we did that over a course of design studies, we're establishing a new standard for the value of Ogden. Comps, as new projects happen after Wonder Block is built, the comps that will be built after that will always look at Wonder Block for a value foundation. And so this is setting a new high bar for new projects going forward. Additionally, even though we're using our tax increment to pay, which is essentially the property tax generated by the Wonder Block, we're using that to pay for the bonds. It will throw off additional sales tax and income tax, not only during construction, which is significant. It's $122 million of construction jobs, materials, suppliers, over a 3 or 4 year period. But there will be more people that have ever lived there, living there. And so their discretionary income will benefit those people on 25th Street and other places in the community that the city will collect taxes on. Programming and events now have a totally different venue that the community can utilize to program what is meaningful to them. That was the thesis behind the Dumpke Arts Plaza. We provided, with the help of the Dumpke family, essentially a black box. And now the community has this black box that they can utilize to their liking. Wonder Block does that in a way where we can tie in that interior area to 25th Street and really create a unique space. And again, more visitors, more residents, and more specifically, we have a tremendous amount of leakage, retail leakage, and brain drain. And so we always talk about how one gentleman spoke about Ogden just staying Ogden. Well, Ogden's not staying Ogden in a lot of ways because our residents leave Ogden to shop. They leave Ogden to work. And it's because we have not been able to provide all the things that our citizens need. They go to Riverdale to shop. They go to Station Park to shop. They go to other places to dine and to shop. They work in Salt Lake or they work in other places. We can have those things here and keep those, keep Ogden. I totally agree with that. And that means that we have to do more because of who we are and our history, and we have to think differently, but the same, because what we're doing has actually been working for a long time now. Why are the BDO lease revenues being used in the project? I've mentioned that a couple of times. They represent a city's return on a previous investment. We feel, because that's unrestricted money, that a portion of that should be reinvested to go into new development investments like the Wonder Block that could then recreate an additional positive return, while still keeping a good portion of BDO lease revenues available for other expenses that are programmed through the normal budget program that our budget process that you all see. So the amount of BDO lease revenue that's captured by this project and the repayment of the bond does not represent all of that revenue source, and that leaves a significant amount to be used for other things. And that leads into this question, are there opportunity costs in terms of using some of that money? As I've mentioned multiple times, because the repayment of the debt for our investment is generated largely by the project itself, and then we utilize other investment monies to pay the rest, it is self-sufficient, self-sustaining. There's a lot of things that you heard about tonight that actually are expenses. They're things that take money, that don't generate this, the sufficient revenue to cover their costs. Things like Wonder Block are the engine that drives the revenue to pay for those things. Other projects that are being considered at the same time that Wonder Block is being considered have their own independent and separate financing sources. And again, those two things don't really marry. You can't take a Wonder Block funding source and apply it to say Marshall White, because, again, part of that source is generated only by building Wonder Block in the first place. And again, I've mentioned before, we're raising the value and the quality of development in Ogden. And so, that's going to allow people the runway to make greater future investments, going forward. So shouldn't we use TIF to support aging city infrastructure before adding new development? New development is actually what generates the TIF, as I've mentioned. And so it's difficult to take TIF that isn't being generated by new development and put it instead into infrastructure. Without new development, there is no TIF, the way that works. And city infrastructure is generally funded through other mechanisms like fees and usage. It's all subject to the enterprise funds that they're allotted to. New development, including this development, is often the means in which cities like Ogden use to develop aging infrastructure. It's the catalyst that is actually used to put new pipes in the ground and build new curb and gutter and sidewalk and pave roads. And in the case of Wonder Block, all the infrastructure from the back of curb inward is actually new infrastructure built by the development. Because we are in a downtown environment, the main lines that this project will connect into are large and large enough to sustain new development. And so building in a downtown environment and utilizing existing infrastructure is the most sustainable activity we could do, especially compared to urban sprawl or other things like that. And so I hope that helps everyone understand that if you rewound everything back to the beginning, it was development that actually drove infrastructure, not the other way around. Why do we need to build new retail when we have available spaces in the downtown? That's a bit of a complex question. There are certainly empty retail spaces in the downtown, and they're empty for various reasons. A lot of time that's limited configuration. There's other limiting factors like ownership, location, condition, those kind of things. We try to work with all of our retail businesses in the downtown to help facilitate growth and sustainability. We utilize Ogden Downtown Alliance for that. We have TIF available for some things. We've supported the Monarch. We've supported the Junction. We've supported numerous businesses on 25th Street. So there's a lot of arrows in the quiver to help our small business. We do loans. We feel that the Wonderblocks retail spaces will be flexible. They'll have a contemporary size and shape. They'll be located in ways that are important to retailers. And all of that data and input we've received from the specialists who work in the retail industry to help us understand how to build a facility that's going to be suitable for success. Ogden has other vacant sites. Can we manage those as well as Ogden, as well as Wonderblock? And the answer is yes, we're managing it. What folks don't see when they see an empty site is all the development work that goes on behind the curtains to get that site from being, in most cases, an existing building to a vacant site to a new building. You can see the timeline that we've been working on, 2016 to 2022, just to get to this point, to be able to share with you what we feel is the highest and best use for the property. It's a significant amount of work and it takes a long time. So we are handling it. But there are privately held properties that we don't really control. Fred Meyer is a property that folks often comment on. And even though we helped or attempted to spur development there, that didn't play out. And so they're a private landowner doing private landowner things. And as much as we would like to see it developed, we don't necessarily control that. Shouldn't we be concerned that the city gave the Rite Aid block and the Wonderblock site to the same developer without a competitive proposal process? So I've covered this as I've discussed, the authority given to us by 17C, the policy that we utilize with the 3 selection methods. And I think the question is a little bit of a misnomer if you look at bullet point 2. In case of the Rite Aid property, JF Capital has been awarded a building on that site, but they are not the master developer of the site. They're a sub-developer selected by the master developer that we've been working with. And so that necessarily wasn't a selection done by the city. We're grateful for it. The building is a wonderful building that they've proposed. And I think, again, about 165 units that are all affordable within the 60 to 80% AMI range. Why is the city in such a hurry to move forward on this project without public input? I won't cover this. I think we've spent some time already. Janine mentioned it. We're doing it right now. Why do we need a new hotel as part of this project since the downtown hotels are empty? This is a real question by a real person. The answer is the downtown hotels are not empty. In fact, they often exceed their normal occupancy levels to the point where visitors have to find other places to stay outside of downtown Ogden. And we work with Visit Ogden, who's our visitors bureau, Sarah and her team, often to understand what the fluctuating market levels are for supply and demand. So based on that and the market studies that we do, there is a need for more hotel rooms in Ogden. Isn't the development of vacant lots a good thing, especially with a developer putting millions into the project that will bring more jobs and residences to currently dilapidated areas and creating new revenue? The answer is yes. We're grateful for this person who actually had a positive thought. Again, we're fortunate to have people who are investing this kind of money and risk. Don't get me wrong. There's risk for the city. There's risk for the developer. But together we mitigate that risk, and we're grateful for their team and their willingness to do that. At the end of the day, we all go home and see our families and do our other things. They are risking personal guarantees. They're risking personal assets. They're risking credit. They're risking a multi-million-dollar business that has been built on careful analysis of development opportunities. And so we don't take that lightly, and neither do they. We are excited about the proposed grocery store. Who's it going to be? Right now, we're in that chicken and egg scenario, meaning we're currently still in feasibility, meaning until we get approval, if we get approval on the project, we're still in the feasibility phase. And so there isn't going to be any retailers or grocers that will commit fully in this phase of the project. But once there is a commitment, then for financing by the city as an investment partner, then the work then shifts to implementation, to where both the city staff and JF will be firming up those commitments and making sure that during the building process, we generate those commitments as much as possible, so that when we open as full as possible. That's the goal, is to have the retail and the grocery experience all tied up, so that the day we cut that ribbon, there's a full experience waiting for everybody. Wouldn't it make sense to put money into roads than a new development? Again, the majority of this development is being made by the developer, and the remainder is being made by money that is generated through property tax by the new development, and money that is generated by BDO lease revenue. That's not necessarily money that's used for roads in the first place. Road revenue is generated through existing property taxes. We get money from the state for certain types of roads, and they generally don't support a direct return. They're an expense. And so, as I mentioned, there's this whole equation that we look at to drive revenue so that we can pay for expenses, and making commitments like this drives that revenue. And really, it's not a choice one or the other. We spend a significant amount of money on roads every single year. We're benefactors of a brand new road just outside of this building. It's beautiful. It's well done. And so we have a public works crew that works very hard to find funding sources that are outside the minimum amount we get from property taxes to make our roads work. Well, adding to our retail and housing stock potentially reduce rental prices due to increased supply. Economics 101 would tell you that the answer to that would be yes. So we're trying to support as much as we can additional housing units. Not only do we have an affordability issue in Utah, but we have an availability issue in Utah. So our thesis has been, through the Quality Neighborhoods Initiative, that we facilitate a broad range of housing types across the spectrum of affordability. And so today's project, you might see market rate units. Tomorrow's project, you might see support of income restricted units. That's because we want to facilitate a broad range of units across the spectrum of affordability. Is the city going to need to incentivize businesses to go into the new spaces? The $64 million investment is our commitment to the project. We feel that at that point there would be significant demand for the Wonder Block, and so we're not expecting additional incentives beyond our investment. Who will manage the property? I mentioned that before. J. Fisher companies or their affiliates. We will manage and maintain the parking structures. Don't we have enough apartments in the downtown area already? If you go back to the Make Ogden plan, the answer would be no. And if you look at where we want the bulk of the apartments in the first place across the community, then we want as many as we can feasibly plan for in the downtown area, thus preserving our residential neighborhoods for single family homes and other things. I wanted to show these two pictures. On the left, my left, you see the municipal building. It's hard to tell, and I'm not quite sure the year, but the federal building is not in the picture, so it's pre-60s. And what you're seeing is downtown development patterns that no longer exist. So we've abandoned the development patterns that actually made Ogden great in the first place. So what you're looking at, if you can tell, is 25th Street headed west, but each block face is consumed by buildings. There is very few parking surface stalls. There's very few things that have been torn down, but the development pattern is dense. It's tall. It's got mass to it, and this is how Ogden became great. You can see on the right, that's the Broome Hotel. That is on 25th Street. That's the location of the Key Bank today, and that was torn down to make way for additional development. But you can see on 25th Street how they utilized density and scale to their benefit. A lot of Ogden folks go to other cities for shopping due to the lack of options. Won't this bring more better shopping options and keep businesses in Ogden? I mentioned that before. Yes, that's what our analysis shows us. We do track zip codes and look at leakage reports. And I would estimate that all of us in this room are guilty of taking our dollars outside of Ogden, and especially online. And that's because Ogden lacks what we desire. And so we go other places. We're not going to bring the uses that are in Riverdale or in other places into the downtown, but we can continue to double down on local businesses and augment them with regional and national businesses that people want. And it's just a balancing act. Why are public funds being used for this development? We've talked about that. Initial proposals fell short of meeting the type of development that we wanted. We're trying to raise the standard and set a new bar of value in the downtown. And so we think we should do that using development funds that are generated by the project and other non-tax funds to support it. And by doing so, we're going to reduce existing surface parking. We're going to increase the businesses and the jobs available to the downtown. We'll increase effective parking infrastructure, and we'll complement historical infrastructure as it relates to 25th Street. Is the city stealing money from residents to give to private developers? The answer to that is no. This is a real question, so forgive the quotations there. Is Wonder Block just like the Junction, only on the dumpier side of town? I'm not sure what that means, because the Wonder Block location is right adjacent to 25th Street, right in the heart of our downtown. And so it is ripe for redevelopment. Again, it was a factory for decades, and so that is not conducive to what we're trying to build with our downtown. So yeah, it is ripe for development. The Junction has proven to be extremely valuable for what it is. Could be argued that it was kind of that rock, that first rock that the city threw in the pond, and the ripple effects from that rock can be measured, and it's obvious and visible. Is the Junction full, and does it provide certain things that people think it should? No, it's also over 2 decades old, but it has done its job to revitalize and catalyze additional investment. And so this is jumping the S-curve. So we've gotten to that point, and now we have to look at how do we reinvent for the future. And Wonder Block is not a silver bullet. It's not going to solve all of our problems, but it does establish, to use the vernacular of the time, a new normal, to where things that come beyond it now have to address it in terms of their existence. Will the Wonder Block development keep the city from addressing other community needs, like other needed redevelopment infill along Washington Boulevard? The answer is no. Again, we're working with businesses along Washington. We're looking at parking solutions to help, especially on the east side of Washington. We have a number of RDAs in place on the east side to help facilitate people and businesses over there. Again, it's not a mutually exclusive endeavor. We're talking about one project, but this is all viewed in the context of community development as a whole. Have the development plans considered the needs for children? Our market study showed that Wonder Block was best suited for 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. And so generally speaking, we won't get a ton of children. We feel that not all open space is green space. So we feel that the promenade that extends from 26th to 25th, that links everything to 25th Street, is that open space that is important for the residents and visitors of Wonder Block. And then we have a park right across the street that will actually be connecting with a little bit more deliberate mid-block crossing elements, so a raised median and some other things that can help people go from Wonder Block to the municipal park a bit more easily. If the city is going to borrow money for development, shouldn't other areas be first, like Rite Aid, Marshall White, and Union Station? So again, these things generally don't cannibalize each other. They're all viewed in the sphere of their own existence. So the Union Station funding, when that time comes, will be specifically identified by the needs of Union Station. Marshall White Center already has a significant amount of funding in place, actually more than Wonderblock, because of the actions that you all have taken and what the administration has done to start to save for that future project. So we look individually at these projects, but then analyze them contextually together, and it all fits. Wonderblock looks great. People don't like change. Will city leaders be able to keep a positive focus and push forward despite the complaints voiced by some? That is our hope. This is a complex project. As you see in your time as the council, one meeting varies to the next, and you could get contradictory requests by citizens even in the same meeting. And so our job is to give you all of our best effort and all of our best information using professionals and other interested parties and help you make the best decision that you can. So where do I find more information about Wonderblock? There is the website with the link. There's also a link that allows you to provide feedback. A lot of these questions were gained from that link, so we collect those and we try to address them in various settings. Okay, moving forward. Anybody need a break?
Yeah, in my bed.
We haven't even gotten to the real part.
That's the unfortunate part, is this is so consequential to the future of Ogden, and we're talking about it at 10 o'clock at night. It's unfortunate. I don't know any other choice but to press on, but I don't know. We're having a hard time. It's been a long night and a long day.
It's up to you. I'm flexible.
How much longer do you think it is?
A while. We're at the halfway point plus the comments.
I mean, you're doing a great job. You could talk a lot. I appreciate it.
I need a drink. Can I?
Are you serious?
A drink?
Yeah. I honestly, I think we need to rethink this because I'm not thinking straight anymore. Honestly, I mean, if it was a work session meeting, maybe, but
I was thinking you might need some fluids. We have been planning this night for a long time. You've been planning this project for a lot longer. So we want to honor this project, but honor the people that are still here.
We have a meeting next week.
We were not aware of the deadline for the district, so we had no choice but to address that tonight. That took a long time.
We have a meeting next week. I mean, I feel bad.
May I add, Chair, that we're moving into the parking segment, so this is a good place to stop if you chose to, and still allow for questions related just to the Wonderblock elements of it.
And then maybe bring back parking next week. Janine, do you have the calendar? You got the calendar in front of you?
Yeah. Just like, how are you doing?
Any thoughts?
So what do you have next?
We have Trustee Beth Holbrook coming from UTA in the work session next week. There are a couple of other items which we could move from the work session. So we do have work session time. There's just a couple of items on the council meeting which also could be moved.
Sounds good.
So
let's do the Wonderblock portion tonight. Parking next week, maybe. Is that a save at least? Honor people's time.
I think we could definitely address any questions regarding the first section.
Let's do that. Let's get questions out from remaining questions about the Wonderblock portion. Next week we'll come back, do it again, honoring people's time and attention and bladders, and we'll do just the parking. Seem like a reasonable plan. Okay. So you're good with your part.
Yes, so I'd be happy to take any of your questions related to Wonderblock, and then.
Do you guys need a break? You good?
She's leaving.
She's leaving. So,
okay, hold on.
Did you need a break?
I'm okay. I just stood up and stretched a little bit. Yeah.
Okay,
But
question
I
and
really
answer?
appreciate all of the effort.
Yes. Would you like me to?
I had a quick question. This is just looking at the map of where the hotel is. Relative, yeah, back up 80 slides. I'm just curious about the parking for the hotel. Like, if you come into town, are you parking at the parking structure and then hauling your luggage across that open breezeway, or is there parking at the hotel?
He's getting to the site plan, and I'll explain that.
I just when I was looking at it,
that one.
Yeah, there we go. I was looking at it. I was thinking, that's a long way to carry your stuff, but I just didn't. Anyway, curious about that.
So yes, the parking for the hotel is under the building that has office, amenity, residential. That north to south building, there's a parking structure built into that, and there will be valet and assisted parking there. So that will load most likely from the backside.
I have a question. If we're going into questions about this part, I mean, I got several from different constituents. So, you covered a lot of them already in part of this. One question that 25th Street business owners have is who will be in charge of maintaining that kind of walkway in that area, that public space? Because they feel that right now, they need a little bit more support even for 25th Street. So they're just curious how that will work.
It's a really good question. So this will operate similar to an owners association. And there will be a management company, a professional management company hired by that owners association to maintain all the common space, as well as buildings and things like that. We'll do the public parking elements, but then a professional company will manage that. That is a big difference between how 25th Street and even the Junction is managed. They're managed more as a collection of businesses instead of a business. And so we wanted to learn from that and do things a bit different here. And we think that will enhance the experience. If you go to City Creek or Station Park or other places like that, they have uniformed people that are walking around maintaining the space. They have a code of conduct or a code of ethics. They have security. All of those things are things that we've learned from other places, both good and bad, and would implement here.
Is it okay if I do a couple more?
I sure can.
I'm sorry. I apologize. It is about this area.
It is.
Some of those business owners, too, are really concerned. We had a recent, we still have an ongoing construction project going on that's really affected a lot of local businesses. So I think many of them are a little bit, leery of having such a large construction project happening so close by. And we know that there's going to be great benefits in 4 years or whatever. They're wondering what is going to happen to them, or what is the city going to do to help support them during this process?
And just to add to her comment, because it's the same thing I've been hearing, they're not worried so much about what's going to happen in 3 years when this is done. They're worried about today and tomorrow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like fight or flight now.
Right. So I would invite anyone from the JF team to help with this comment, but there's a couple of things that will be affecting the state courts, because we will be taking up some of the land that they're utilizing for parking. We would then shift their parking to Grant Avenue, and Grant Avenue would, from essentially where the edge of their building is down to 26th Street, that would be largely dedicated for court parking. So that'll have an impact on folks that might use that parking now today. We're trying to gauge our construction timeline around things like the marathon, which dead ends there on 25th Street. Because the project is largely contained in the site, there will be some off-street work that would need to be done, most likely in Lincoln and Grant, where we connect to utilities and things. Those would be traditional construction project nuisances where you have to navigate detours or go through construction signage. I think personally, the amount of people working on this site over the course of the 3 or 4 years will be a boon to 25th Street and other businesses, because all of those workers have to have a place to eat. They may find a place that they've never been to before and bring their families back. They are coming to work and leaving home, so they're likely to stop and get gas somewhere in town, hopefully. So generally speaking, when you're looking at indirect benefits of projects like this, you calculate construction jobs and income from the construction period. And I think that'll be helpful. But there'll be general construction nuisances that people can expect. Do you guys have anything to add to that? They're like, we want out of here too.
Right. At least now we've got some walls.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for Brandon?
I think the other ones are kind of focused on parking, so we can do that next week.
Okay. I do want to get to the point. It doesn't have to be tonight, but I want to know where these numbers came from, how the cost estimates were developed, and how the splits were kind of assigned. So we can get to that next week.
I would just recall to your memory the spreadsheet exercise we had with Mel. The answers are largely in that, and we can cover that again. But once you see the operating agreement and the schedules that are listed in that, and you revisit the spreadsheet, I think it'll make a lot of sense.
Okay. So that's the thing we haven't seen.
That's right. Those are the documents that we're transmitting soon.
Okay. Questions from other questions from council members? So our intent was to give opportunities to the public to come and ask questions of Brandon and then get answers. We'd still like to honor that intent if anyone has questions that haven't been answered in his presentation. Just by show of hands, we got a couple. So a few. Okay. Let's just come up and quickly share your question, and then Brandon will give an answer.
I'll go sit over there maybe.
Yeah, if you want to, that'd be great. Thanks.
How much time are we giving them for these?
We're not going to time it.
The aspect of construction access and impact, if anything, everything can be done, so to speak, built from the back wall side of 25th Street. I've watched the condo. I've been to 2-Bit Street Cafe. I've kind of watched it be a ghost town at times and other things because of the impact of the current condo. Now, I've seen the impact along Jefferson Avenue with no restraints to UTA or the big belly dump trucks or anything else rebuilding 25th Street. Our infrastructure is completely destroyed on Jefferson. So that dynamic is everything should be built from the back wall. Ogden City Mall was torn down from the back wall right to the front. So right when it came down, where'd the mall go? And so I think that's the dynamic to me is that we talked about businesses locating in Ogden and staying in Ogden. We need to look and say, what critical businesses are we about to lose?
Do you have a question or?
Yeah, I said, what about the impact? Can they be done? Can everything be done off of 25th Street? Don't put the construction on 25th Street like it is currently. Can that be done? The other aspect is why so much money from BDO revenues? Because when that was given to us, it was given to us to decrease tax burden on Ogden City. So to say it doesn't increase the tax burden, it does, because we're not decreasing our taxes. The BDO monies was guaranteed when we got the property was to decrease and so pay for other infrastructure, not just pet projects. I applaud the efforts and emphasis, the architecture fees that are going for the whole project that goes to a Denver company when there are capable Utah companies that could have been the architects, very capable and competent. Can that come, that percentage? We don't pay for that out of our revenues. So those are the types of things when we're sending so much money out of state, for in-state project, can the contractors be locally sourced? And then the other aspect is I appreciate my initial comment and not a guaranteed master lease. Fantastic. I'm glad there was pushback. The parking aspects, we've still yet to say how much we paid for the Ogden City Mall parking terrace and how we had to decrease and pay that debt in order for us to tear down the mall and reinvest. Why is there not a comparison to say, here's how much we're paying for parking again? And then also Stop and Shop on 12th Street was closed for all of one day when they rebuilt. And so the same thing, transition for courts, parking, everything else. If some of the lot stays vacant for the next phase or phase 2 of a particular building to accommodate parking for the bigger things, then can we do that negligibly impacting the neighborhood?
Okay, thank you. Brandon, you want to give it a shot on that?
Yeah, that was fast. I was trying to.
I know.
I had to go steal a notepad because I can't remember that much. So in terms of construction, this is a massive site. The west parking structure would be the first building built, which is the standalone parking structure. It's a concrete structure. It's post-tension slab, so it's cast in place. There's going to be a lot of cranes. It's multiple stories. So it'll occupy a large footprint, both from the building and the construction. I'm not sure what it means to build from 25th Street. We will maintain a singular access point, because we want to control stormwater pollution and dust. And so they'll maintain a singular access point, and I believe it's off of Lincoln, right? And so that Lincoln access will be where all the trucks and traffic come through. Construction parking will be maintained on site inside the fence, and so people will park there. Obviously, this is a wall-to-wall development. There's really no wiggle room. So the more the buildings get built, the tighter it's going to get, and construction will have to adjust. Sure. Will you come up to this microphone?
My name is Brock Loomis with J. Fisher Companies. Just to address a couple of the comments, I think Brandon hit on it, but just real quick, we understand the work that's been done on 26th Street. We don't plan to come in and interrupt that. We also understand the businesses on 25th Street, and the small amount of access that we have to that site will really just be used to build the hotel there. Efforts are going into the civil design to connect utilities for the hotel to the south, not the north, as much as possible, so that we don't have to cut into 25th Street unless absolutely necessary. You'll see a small amount of utility connections into Grant and Lincoln. We worked hard with the engineering department to look at potential development in the future, whether it be this project or another, a while ago when they were designing 26th Street, and they did stub utilities into the site as much as possible to address your concern, to make sure that a development wouldn't need to impact that road more than necessary. And then as far as the impact to the site, I mean, it really will be very much self-contained within the project. There is access that has to be had, and that'll all be pushed to Lincoln. But inside the site is where the majority of the work will be done, the parking for construction crews, and all construction work. So
will there be local service providers for some of these specialized services like architecture, et cetera?
For sure. So the architecture firm is based out of Denver, and that was a choice made by their experience with mixed use projects of this size and scale. As far as the construction of the project, it will be vastly built by local contractors and local subcontractors.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
What was the question about learning lessons from the junction parking? Did you catch that?
The junction parking was built in 1979. I think the only thing that we have from that time is a blueprint. So I can't speak to that, unfortunately. Okay. The BDO lease revenue question, again, was 1999. I've read some of the documents, not all of them. They're about this thick. And so I can't speak to the intent of what the revenue from the lease split was meant to go towards. I know that at the time it was a much more speculative project than even this is, because they were taking donated land with no infrastructure, bonding for it, and then hoping that we would get development revenue from it. So I'm not sure if that intention was clear, and if it was, I don't know about it. Brock mentioned the local teams, which I think is great. Their integrated builder is local, and all the subs are local.
Right.
As well.
Yeah. So we do have an integrated commercial GC on the project, and our subcontractors that we use are all local.
Okay. And then the last one was architectural fees being offset or avoided. It's a $122 million project. Our contribution is 64. And so, however you want to do the ledger, we could probably accommodate that.
Okay. Thanks, Brock.
Thank you.
Okay. So come on up. Let's make it clear, concise, and quick.
I'm going to be trying concise.
Thank you.
I've got three questions. One, what's the plan on snow removal in the wintertime? The second is that quickly address one of your points is about what made Ogden a high rise on the street. That was because we had an awesome, absolutely world-class public transportation system, of which we do not anymore. And what's your plan to address the extreme need for public transportation to get them down? My third question is, you went very in depth on market rate for housing. What about market rate for retail? What makes Ogden Ogden is locally owned and operated shops. They are not going to be able, especially getting off the ground, being able to afford market rates. So I fear that we're going to get nothing but McDonald's, Popeyes, Golden Corral, or whatever, that's not Ogden, that's Roy, that's every other place. And what are we going to do to help subsidize and get locally owned and operated businesses, retail, and give them a chance to survive, which is what made Ogden Ogden.
Thanks, Al. You spread joy without even trying, my man. Go ahead.
So I'll call on Brock again for the snow removal, but let me answer the other question. So public transportation, obviously we have the new OGX line that would be supported by this. We have micro transit. The concept of building structured parking and creating environments where people park once and move around is at the heart of being efficient and sustainable. And so we feel like by connecting this to 25th Street and providing adequate parking for all the people who would come to the site, both for Wonder Block and 25th Street, we're encouraging people to actually make different and better decisions. And just a plug for the paid parking system, as we looked at how to manage our existing parking more efficiently, one of the benefits of moving to a paid management system is actually in some cases, it disincentivizes people taking cars and allows them to make alternate choices for mass transit. So all of those things together really feed into this notion of creating a walkable, sustainable community. Market rate for retail. So a lot of the stuff we heard at Make Ogden in the Make Ogden process was just that 25th Street is a unique collection of historic buildings that has a unique collection of local businesses. And that combination really makes for a special place. Unfortunately, the entire city of Ogden can't be local businesses in quaint little historic buildings. We have to build on that. And so we sought to honor what 25th Street already offers, but then create a different kind of a space for other retailers so that as we come down to the downtown, we can experience both. Again, those things are not mutually exclusive. People in Ogden shop at these places that are not in Ogden. So it is reasonable to believe that if the places that people are already shopping at were in Ogden, that the Ogden citizens would shop there and not do it at the expense of the local businesses. So I think those two things are totally compatible. Snow removal.
Glenn Gersberger from J. Fisher Companies. I'll address that point just a little further too, and I apologize. I had jaw surgery a couple of weeks ago, so I'm still bound up. Snow removal. Part of my job at J. Fisher Companies is to manage these facilities, and what we've done and designed into this project is a snow melt system, so that it doesn't have to be pushed to different locations. It will be evaporated through the snow melt system. The bulk of the project has that, and that's how that will be addressed. And also, as part of the retail, we're really approaching this from a curative point of view. We've hired consultants from Southern California that work on lifestyle centers and are really keyed into finding the perfect match for this particular area and this particular use. And one of the things that we did talk about, because we're sensitive to this makers market that you have here in Ogden, that we would have summertime activities or space dedicated to those makers. They could come in and sell their wares or their products. Again, trying to activate that public realm to bring people to that area. That's key to the entire project. So we're sensitive to that, and would certainly not be charging market rents for that specialized use for special events. So that's helpful.
So a little more on the evaporation of water.
Snow melt?
It just melts. It melts. It doesn't evaporate and just go away. It melts and runs to where?
Well, underneath, in all of those public spaces, what we call public realm, we'll have hydronic systems. In other words, pipes that run under the surface that put heat under those surfaces, melts the snow, goes into the stormwater system.
Okay.
So
there's two places that I know of in the downtown that have this already. One is around the Megaplex, and the other is around the Ensign South building.
Cool. Okay.
Saves us a lot of time.
Good deal. Was there any? Thank you.
I think that's it.
That was it.
Okay. Any questions, council members? Okay. Next.
During the presentation, I heard about opportunities for rentals in terms of housing. Will there be any opportunities for ownership? And if not, what does the market research say on the reasoning behind that? Oh, my name's Hank Costner.
Thanks, man.
Good question. Out of the 354 units that are being proposed, they're all rental units. There is there's a unique market as it relates to condo ownership. There was a big project at the junction that was endeavored to do that, and it converted to apartments. I know that the JF team has some specific information about what lenders think about condos and the size of condo projects and how financeable they are. So I would leave the specifics to someone from JF.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. He's got a broken jaw.
You were closest to the exit, so.
No, my wife, she's tough, so I just learned that I don't mouth off to her. I'll be better off. Mixed-use project. So finding a lender that will embrace a mixed-use project like this is substantial, especially one at this dollar amount. So office, retail, grocer, multifamily, hotel, that's a lot. Throw in a potential condo, it becomes unfeasible because it carries too much risk for the lender. It carries too much risk for the developer, and it creates a great environment for lawsuits is what it's come down to try and condo and sell units in a project like this. So we will have an association that manages the entire project. But what we didn't want to do was have a homeowners association competing with that use. So,
do these projects exist in other places, even though it's hard? But do they exist where there's condos that are
very, very infrequently? If you look at the downtown Salt Lake area, there's very few condos in that area. They're either buildings dedicated for sale, or they're part of a. It's hard to have that in a mixed use community.
So I'm sorry to push back. I understand that it's hard, but I'm more curious to hear if it's impossible. If it's impossible, then it's impossible. But if it's hard and it's not impossible, then
I can't say it's impossible. But what I can say is it becomes very difficult to find a lender who would agree to this type of project with for sale product.
Yeah. Okay.
Right now, we're dealing with a very good lender who understands this type of project, but throw in that additional element, we may have great difficulty trying to finance the project.
My name's Chad Bessinger. It's not impossible, but it's just not worth the risk for developers. So somebody can try to tell me if I'm not telling the truth, but try to go find downtown Salt Lake where a condo, structure has been built. There might be a small, tiny one, like with 10 to maybe 20 units, but nothing, like 100 units, 200 units, 350 units. They're just not around. It's not worth it for developers to kind of take on that risk.
And the risk is what you said earlier, like lawsuits primarily, or
yeah. I mean, if we condominiumize 354 units here at Wonder Block, there's going to be unhappy people about whatever.
Sure.
In construction, nothing's ever perfect.
What about
even if you're building just a single family home, there's still issues that need to be looked after.
Right.
So people kind of they kind of build off each other's frustrations, and sometimes that leads to class action lawsuits. So developers just don't want to do that.
Thank you.
Is there a possibility at the end when the project's sold off that could transition into owner occupied spaces, or is it pretty much locked in from the beginning that it'll be rentals?
You might have a buyer that comes in.
Yeah, as long as we're in ownership and in management of it, it'll always be rentals. Yeah.
So last question on that one. What about then, same thing for even a small portion, dedicating 10% of your units? Even that is highly, it's
still tough to do.
Still, okay.
To talk to lenders into that.
Okay. Thank you.
I got a question before you sit down. The guy with the jaw.
Glenn. Yeah.
Glenn, thanks.
Gren.
You mentioned the activation of spaces.
Yeah.
Different events, different makers, etc. Like I think that's really important for the energy within the space. How do we pay for that kind of a activation?
That actually comes from our side. So we'll have what we call them as common area maintenance costs that will be attributable to everyone that's in that project. So from the grocer to the retail to the multifamily, they'll all be contributing into this common area expense pool. And the funds that are in that pool will accommodate those type of projects or events.
So how would you envision that dovetailing with like a farmer's market and all of the downtown events that we host and things like that?
Well, I hope they'll complement them. Mm-hmm. What we're hoping and anticipating will happen is anything that's going to be on the 25th Street, we'll see the activity on that plaza or alley that we're calling it, and be drawn in to see what's happening down there. That water wall that you saw with 3-dimensional figures that are always changing from season to season. It will be a place that people come for that Instagram moment where they can come and see what's being shown there. That activation is going to be critical for that, as well as complementing what's going on 25th Street.
Okay. And I could add to that, Chair. We have included folks like Christy McBride in our ACE team, as well as Kim Bauscher and the Ogden Downtown Alliance in the development of some of these concepts. So we're already starting to think about how to meld what's currently happening and what could be happening in addition to that with this new space. As I mentioned, it becomes a black box, and although it's privately owned, there'll be a public easement, and through special event permits or other things like that, we can facilitate having cool things happen. That's what we want as a city. That's what the developer would allow for. So I think it's like you said, a complement to 25th Street.
Okay. So would your fees, and I'll just be totally transparent with where I'm headed about it. I'm not trying to cross-examine you. I'm just worried about using so much of our TIF that we won't be able to provide additional services in the future for all this additional demand and, mass of people, et cetera. So I'm just curious about what other, activating the space is one thing, but cleaning up after that activation and providing essential services like medical and fire or and police, et cetera. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that all falls back on the development project. Okay. So we would bear those costs.
So you're going to pay for our cops?
Well,
that's good.
If we need.
Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
It's interesting. We actually, cops are a huge benefit to our projects, and where we can find them to bring them in and have that presence always there, we'll always give them breaks on rent to be in that presence who's always around the property. So
one other thing, because I feel like this is important to you, as part of the study that we conducted of the analogs of places that exist like this, one of the most significant study was that of the Dairy Block in downtown Denver, of which a lot of these folks, including Rob Berg there with the cool hair, was instrumental in creating. And that was the very thing that they sought to answer is how do you create these really cool spaces that are usually at the dead end of a building or in an alley, and how do you activate it, and who's going to pay for it, and who's going to manage it, and who's going to sponsor it. And so that team informed our study on all of those questions. And we're really excited about the opportunity with a company that has the capacity to manage it, along with sponsors of events, the city, and ODA. I think that it will be a really cool place that we can fold into what we're already doing.
Okay, I think I'll just make this point and then we'll move on. But I'm thinking about calls for service, fire marshal have to do an inspection for whatever. Code services, calls, etc. I mean, there's in my mind, there's just conceptually demands of staff and resource that I'm worried we're not accounting for. It's one thing when we do TIF on smaller scales around the city. This one's got me just more sensitive to that because of its scale and mass, right? Which are all great things. I'm just wondering from a policy standpoint and maybe a philosophical standpoint, how do we pay for those things moving forward?
So with new infrastructure, there's likely to be very little, at least in the short term, very little demand for service to utilities and things like that, because it's all brand new, essentially, from the back of curb in. With this amount of people all in one place, you'll more likely get a higher demand for medical services and potentially for police services. Those things are funded by our general fund indirectly, so not any given project pays into those things. So as I mentioned in my presentation, as the direct and indirect and imputed benefit of WonderBlock expands to our general fund over time as we see increased sales tax and property tax of adjacent properties, that all goes to the general fund, which allows us to hire more police officers, which then have the ability to staff more calls for service. So there isn't a direct correlation per se, and TIF wouldn't be necessarily the link anyway, but that imputed and indirect benefit of having a project like this that's going to grow the general fund capacity of the city to provide those services across the whole town is the main point.
Okay, so it would fall on future councils to make wise policy and budget decisions with the revenues that we gain from this.
Okay. Well said. Absolutely.
Yeah,
the economic development policies are almost never the problem for how services are rendered. It's usually the decisions that are made after the economic benefit is inured and what people decide to do with that benefit.
Okay.
And in case I don't get to stand up again, Janine, nice job. Brandon, fantastic job.
Oh, you're coming back.
You did well.
Don't worry. Yeah. We asked Brandon to sit up here because we expected this. And I had a meeting recently where the public and the speakers were sharing a mic and it did not work well. So okay.
Just a super quick follow up on the condos. I don't know if, I know this question and answer, is in my mind to look at whatever concerns we have, the public might have. So that I understand where the answers and where they're coming from, but to me, that's very important. Someone just alerted me that there are places where they have condos and townhomes and these type of developments for sale. And so for me personally, that's super critical. And for me, could be a deal killer for me. And the other question I had was, because of how important I think is to give our people in our community the opportunity to be homeowners. And then the question I had was, if this was addressed, I apologize if I missed it, but did anyone address how this project was, when it started, it was created or envisioned pre-pandemic, and the amount of office space that we have in a post-pandemic now era where we might having too much office space? Has that been looked at?
So is your question, do we is there too much office space?
Is there too much office space now in a post-pandemic era where a lot of people seem to be working from home, and a lot of companies, it seems to be that that's where they're moving. Has that been looked at? Because these projects started before the pandemic.
Yeah. We feel very comfortable with the size of the office space. It's 100,000 square feet. It's not a lot, comparatively speaking. Right now, Farmington City is actually under construction, building the roads and utilities to support 1 million square feet of office by Station Park. We work with the Northern Utah Economic Development Alliance with Chris Roybal, and he has done far more extensive studies than we have. But in general, Northern Utah has a significant deficit of needed office. The office use is changing. Right. So these downtowns that are monolithically developed as office locations. So think Manhattan, downtown Seattle, some places like that. Big metropolitan areas that are largely office uses. Those were hit the hardest in the pandemic because there was a shutdown of that. But you see in the news over and over and over again recently that the major companies of the world are requiring a return to work policy for their employees. And so I don't think we are monolithic like that, meaning I don't think we have so much office that we're going to be just aligned with this one product class. I think 100,000 square feet in an office market that still has some room to grow, and we're feeling that competitive pressure, right? With the Farmington example that I've mentioned, Clearfield is building office in their downtown. Roy's looking at office on 1900 West, and so we're talking about multiple years from now, A, and B, we think it's right sized, and C, it's a type that we don't currently have a lot of. We have some good office space, but we don't have traditional floor plates where it's 10,000 square feet or 20,000 square feet or 25,000 square feet. And these businesses that we are recruiting through our economic development office that are generally connected to the aerospace and defense industry, those are the types of offices that they want and need. The primes are going to live close to hill and on hill, but the subprimes and the suppliers and vertically integrated companies that support those massive companies want to be in downtown areas that are unique, that are experiential, that have everything out the front door. And so those are the types of places that will probably be in high demand.
Told you you'd be back.
Yeah. So a little bit of a case study. We have developed about 110,000 square feet of office in Centerville. And we had one of our anchor tenants leave an entire floor in July. COVID certainly has had an impact on how people office and whether they work from home or work from the office. But what I learned with that vacancy coming on in July of this year is that the market is still very deep, and we have backfilled that entire space to date. So not with one single tenant, it's 5 different tenants, but there's still depth in the market for office use.
Okay. Thank you.
Mitch Vance, J. Fisher Companies. I just wanted to address really quickly Councilman Lopez with the condo association. The thought, what I can offer is coming from, I used to work for a city, and we had a planning commission that had this question frequently. Why are you building apartments when we want condos, we want ownership? To the point where they had us research it, had me research it as one of the planning staff, because Midvale, Mill Creek has a lot of condos. Sandy had some condos as well. So we looked into that and found for the most part, condos in Utah have worked after establishment of apartments. The apartments are established, and a couple decades later, they are able to be condominiumized. That's obviously not the case for all developments, but it is a complex process. And at least in that area that we studied, that's how they were done for the most part. And all of them that we looked at were standalone apartment, with a sea of parking around it, rather than a dense mixed use, which just complicates it a little bit more. So I am with the developer, but giving you a little bit of another city's perspective, because I understand the concern.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're going to go to George next. Thanks for your patience.
My name's George Pappas. I have property in various parts of Ogden. I'm not going to talk about them. This is all financial. Miller Construction Company is coming up with $124 million. Is that right?
That's right.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. The J. Fisher Company.
$124 million.
I'm sorry, what was the last question?
Do they have $124 million?
So the portion that J. Fisher Companies would provide to the project is both debt and equity.
So with what?
It is debt and equity combined.
Debt and equity and what? You got to build a building.
So, George, why don't you ask all your questions, and then we'll give you answers to all of them. I don't want you to run out of time. Sorry.
Let me look here a minute. Did you ever get a Dun & Bradshaw on Miller Construction? Dun & Bradshaw on Miller Construction.
Okay. Do you have any more questions?
Yeah.
Keep going.
Did you ever get a certified certified financial statement on them? You guys are going into business with somebody. You got to know who and what they got. I've been through 3 depressions and survived all 3. And watch what you're doing. I'd do a lot of inspecting. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, George. I've only been through 1 depression tonight. Just kidding. Just kidding. Okay, Brandon, to you.
No, we have not looked at the DUNS number. But yes, we have looked at extensively the project financials and the financials of J. Fisher Companies, and more importantly, have talked to many of the people that they have worked with and some of their partners. And so we feel very confident about their ability to perform.
Is it a certified accounting opinion or
no?
Okay. So the answer is no, we have not.
To certified financials, no, we have not looked at audited financials.
Will we be?
If that's a request of the council, I'm sure we can.
Okay. Thanks, George. And then the Miller Construction Company.
I think he meant J. Fisher Companies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. All right. Who's next? Anybody else come on up? We'll get to the Heath and Amelia online as soon as we get through the in-person.
Stephanie Vaughn, and my question is, have you looked at putting greenhouses on top of any of the buildings to potentially grow food for not only residents or the grocery store or for local businesses? And then as well for the parking structure, is there going to be potential to have a nature space, like a little park area or a community garden on top of something like that so we can build a little more food stability into our city? That's my question.
Thank you, Stephanie. And we've also been asked that question about solar panels as well. So maybe you could add that to it.
So I've got some comments. Anyone from the Fisher team can join in. The parking structure and potentially some of the buildings will house solar array panels. And so the goal is to provide energy for as much or all of the project as we can, at least the parking structures that we would control. In terms of green roofs, on projects like this, because they're so dense on the site, you need somewhere to put things, and usually that's generally on the roof. Green roofs and the like add expense, and so that's something that at this point isn't part of the project, given the need for that real estate to house cooling towers and other things that live on tops of roofs. And in terms of the green space, there will be in the open space public realm, it'll be a combination of hardscape and softscape. The softscape will be complementary, so there is no at this point there's nothing planned that's open turf or something like that. We're relying on the municipal park to provide a lot of that because it's already there, and we're utilizing the public realm to be a very nice quality space with if you see the renderings, there's a lot of greenery, but it's typically in the form of plantings.
Okay. Thanks, Brandon. Okay. Anyone else in the chambers? Okay. Okay. Okay.
Oh, I know I should have eaten dinner. Angel Castillo, Ogden resident. I just want to be clear and reiterate again that I am not against this project. What I'm concerned about is the fiscal sustainability of our infrastructure and what we're doing with TIF. Mr. Cooper has repeatedly said, oh, we have research studies. And there's a team member who said, I've worked in a town and we've done this in my world and Weber's world. Whenever you do economics, if you don't have recent data, any of this data is at less than 120 days old, because we're headed into a recession and unemployment is going to be 5% in the next 9 months. The feds are going to raise the rate. We just are coming out of a pandemic. It's a weird time. And I keep going back to strong towns because these people are the experts. And, you know, there's some things that you need to ask, and is the public losing anything? Before a local government can approve a project for TIF, they need to ensure that the project passes the but-for test. But for the TIF subsidy, the develop wouldn't happen. And if that's true, TIF is jump-starting and the public isn't losing anything. The problem is, however, that it's a challenge because the money to pay off the initial TIF subsidy is coming from property taxes that otherwise wouldn't have been collected at all. And it's essential that we ensure that the TIF is going to truly necessary. And as Chair Nadolski had pointed out, we have strain that's going to happen. Yes, it's coming, you know, police and fire are under general fund, but when you put people in a place, we're going to have more police calls. Our police department doesn't have enough staff. They're not paid enough. We just gave them a raise. I mean, we've got to future think about the impact and plan for the impact. I'm not saying that this is a bad idea. I'm saying going into a big deal like this without due diligence, recent data, and planning for expenses that are going to happen, that are going to strain our general fund, that will result in raised taxes.
So is your question, is the community losing anything?
Pardon?
Is your question, is the community losing anything with the use of TIF? Or is it recent data?
The but-for test.
But-for.
And is any of this data less than 120 years old regarding a market study?
Days. But for.
So what was read as a statement from an article or a podcast somewhere is the actual mantra that we live by constantly in terms of the world of TIF and the RDA. And you all can attest to that, or most of you, given the experience that you've had with me and my team over the years as we have brought to you projects for approval. That is the fundamental basis in which we even look at a TIF subsidy. So yes, but for analysis has been made, and I think it's evident, given the numbers that we have shared with you, the fact that the project needs $64 million of additional investment beyond what the investment community and the banking community would be willing to lend based on NOIs and market yield. And so the short answer is yes, absolutely. In terms of market studies, so the number of studies that have been conducted are being refreshed as needed. Those that aren't refreshed are based on enduring economic principles in terms of value created, how, and I explained a lot of it in my presentation. There's more to come next time, so stay tuned for that. But this idea of using money in the case of TIF that doesn't really exist to facilitate and energize future value that then you can capture through policy decision making and otherwise, that's really what we're talking about here. So I'm not sure how to answer the question other than it's inaccurate to suppose that this isn't based on an extensive amount of data and analysis by my team, their team, and a whole other team that you can't see. All that data is available. We're happy to share all of or some of it with the council at any time that they choose.
But I think the argument was that it might be old data.
Right. So the answer to that is no. The data that needs to be refreshed gets refreshed in terms of looking at rents. Right. Rents over time change, and so when you look at rental pro formas, you want to look at where the rental market is at that time. So as we go through our development analysis, and then certainly during underwriting, when we do our bond pricing and the bank's underwriting with the JF team, all of that will be thoroughly investigated and looked at by the banks. They'll vet all the data because again, they're at the most risk, or as much as we would be in terms of a lender or investor. And so all that data will be investigated, vetted, and they'll be done with far more sophisticated tools and teams that we have. But we've done our investigation as well. And that's an ongoing process between now and when the construction loan is funded and construction starts.
Thanks, Brandon. Travis, can you come up and quickly state the part that we didn't answer? Quickly.
Yes.
Thanks.
It's the dynamic of who are we in danger of losing and how can this project benefit? If we're investing so much of our taxpayer money / BDO funding, everything else, every time I drive by the Big Sky conference, we showed the Key Bank building. They were right there for how many years? Big Sky, Ogden, Utah, now Farmington, Utah. Management Training Corporation, Bob Marquardt's legacy, Centerville, Utah. I mean, these aspects, who are we in danger of losing? So I'm saying right now, it's not obviously the question can answer tonight. We need to just get out there, knock the doors and say, what can we do? And then as far as market rates or anything else, the business thing, let's subsidize the business front, so to speak, through BIC or whatever else to keep those people here. Okay. When I cry almost every time I go by Big Sky Conference in Farmington, Utah.
I can relate.
I mean, it's just so that
my wife works there.
Yeah,
it's a longer drive. Yeah. Okay, who are we at risk of losing?
I don't know. The thesis that I subscribe to, and I think we all subscribe to, is that the rising tide raises all boats. The market is a competitive environment, and so when market forces change, then people have to adapt, and sometimes there's losers and winners. I know exactly why Big Sky left, because I was part of that deal. But there's lots of reasons why businesses succeed and businesses don't succeed, why they move and why they stay. All we know is that we're trying to propose to you the concept that there's economic development principles at play here, and that they're tried and true. Can rely on them because we're the benefactors of them over the last 25 years, and that's evident through the growth of the downtown and the growth of the city, and the valuation. If you just look at pure valuation of the city, the macro environment is not purely the reason why we've grown as well as we have. The micro environment has certainly been impactful, and that's all because of the economic development policies and decisions that we've made for 2 decades. So we're continuing to employ those principles, utilizing good faith and good partners, and trying to do the best that we can for everyone. Again, none of this is mutually exclusive. Just because Wonderblock happens doesn't mean that we're not lending to small businesses. Doesn't mean that we're not trying to propose a complete renovation to 25th Street, the streetscape. It doesn't mean we're not also going to propose simultaneously a complete renovation to the Junction streetscape. All of those things are at play. They live in kind of their own little worlds, and they're not mutually exclusive. They can happen simultaneous to create a really vibrant environment.
Okay, thanks. All right, I think we're good in-house here. Okay, let's go online to Heath Sato. Heath, can you concisely ask your questions?
No, sir, probably not.
Okay, you got 2 minutes.
Okay, I'll do my best. It's almost 1 a.m. where I'm right now, so I'll do my best to be quick. I agree the financials are good for the developer. We're giving them over 1/3 of the money to do this. And please note that you've given more time to each individual from the development company than you've ever given any citizen in a single public meeting. I agree with the developer that when they noted that they don't want to take on any real risk beyond having rental units, that's not their job. And with all due respect, I don't know what to make of Mr. Cooper sitting in the seat where, honestly, a more courageous mayor should be sitting tonight. I got to say, I'm not mad at the developer at all, despite their own lack of direct experience with mixed-use projects. They're doing what developers do. They find projects that are optimally profitable, and how we ended up with them tells me a lot that they are really happy with this agreement. To the point, you were presented up front with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The first thing you listed was real estate. I don't know how many times I have to tell you, you're being fed only what meets the presentation's needs. The base of Maslow's pyramid is air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, and reproduction. I won't get into the details of reproduction, but our air is getting worse. Our water is vanishing while the developer is insisting upon a high evaporation water wall feature for this development. I was told in person by the developer that the water wall isn't optional. I guess it's worth it for the Instagram moment. Honestly, I'm not seeing any real concern with very real issues that affect people that actually live here, unlike the developer or our director of community and economic development. We have food concerns in at least a third of our population. Shelter is a piece of that equation, but none of that's being offered below market rate. We're being told we have to build higher rent apartments to help the people with lower incomes. It's the most Orwellian presentation I've ever seen. The most polite way I can put this is that you're being fed junk in the hope that you eat that junk and say it's delicious. KISS is not free money.
Okay.
Done.
Thanks, Heath. So I'll address the question about Brandon's seat. I asked him to sit there. As I stated before, I recently had a meeting that I was responsible for running, and we had one mic for multiple speakers, and it was a mess. And as bearing tonight, you're speaking a lot. So thanks for joining us up here to be more efficient. This is a work session. Anyway, I didn't hear you other. Did you catch any more questions than that? Okay, let's go to Amelia Jones.
Okay, thanks. All right. I've got, let's see, a couple things I'll start with. One is I'm a business on 25th Street, so I'm aware of how busy that alley behind my business is right now with the parking, and I have a lot of concerns about the hotel. One of the council people brought up the issue of the hotel and the parking for the hotel being not that close to the hotel. I know for staying in a hotel that not everyone's a valet park, or people, like to have their cars. They like to be close to their cars. I've got some concerns about the busyness of that alley, and I'm wondering, so part of the question on this part is how flexible, how final is this plan? I mean, will the actual layout of Wonderblock be adjusted as we would go forward? The next question is, if this is really all rental housing, and I have been to open houses and talked to developers, the management of that is super important. And I was not under the impression that the Fisher Company had done extensive management, but I don't know that I understood that correctly. So I'd like to have their experience managing rentals and their commitment to managing them as we go into the future, because one of the things that's kind of a red flag to me is the parts where you say you're going to sell the project perhaps after 10 years, and that's really concerning to me. I don't think the city should really be in this to make money. I think the city should really be in this to make the best community and make the best decisions for our city over whether we're going to make any money or not. So even, whether we're going to get money coming out of a sale, if we get money out of a sale, fantastic, but that shouldn't be one of our goals in this Wonderblock.
Okay. Thanks,
so, I have other questions too, if they can address that management. The tenants, I'm concerned about. They say they've done a lot of market research on finding tenants, and I want to know if they are how they are making sure they're not going to be competing with local businesses. I'm curious about how they know that Ogden can handle the kind of density that this project has, and is there any possibility you would consider doing mixed level housing in this, so that, for instance, someone who worked in the grocery store could also live in the complex?
Okay, thanks,
Or
Amelia.
part of it.
Thanks. If you have more questions, bring them next week when we start at a regular time, too. Okay, Brandon.
Try to keep up.
Flexibility.
Flexibility. We've actually gotten quite a few comments in the open houses about the design. Nothing earth shattering. One of the interesting comments was the hotel lives at the top of it lives on 25th Street at the top of the project with the promenade or the public realm coming down south. And it was important for you to be on 25th Street and look down that alleyway or that promenade and see all of the cool things that are happening. And so to do that, that hotel has a glass element to it so that you can see through the hotel. But there's some concerns that there might be feelings of restriction that you can actually go through that glass building and into the public realm. And so I think that's something that we're rethinking. The green space is an interesting comment. There might be some opportunity for us to boost the green space. I don't think it's going to be something that duplicates what the park offers, but there could be some opportunities so that if you own a pet in the apartments and you need to take the pet out somewhere, you don't have to walk across the street. There's something on site for you there. Parking for the hotel, I appreciate everyone's concern for the hotel operator and how they would manage the operations of the hotel. But all of these things are typical things, especially in dense mixed use environments. And so there's no one on the team that feels like that's going to be a prohibition to a hotel user there. Especially, again, people are willing to walk and they're even willing to drag a suitcase. If you look at the Hampton, which is on the corner of 24th and Washington, there is no parking for that building. It utilizes the parking structure to the south of it, and there is sometimes limited to no connection between the two. And so if you park on Kiesel Avenue, you'll see a ton of folks dragging their little suitcase along Kiesel Avenue behind the conference center, behind their trash dumpster to get around the block into Hampton. That isn't a good experience. Yet people do it, and Hampton's a very successful hotel. So we think if we create an awesome environment and provide for those people that want to valet their car, it'll work out. I kind of agree with the making money thing. You may recall that we originally said that this project is being proposed on the merits of itself, meaning the principles that we're applying here and the goals that we're trying to achieve by even proposing a project like this are worthy of pursuing in and of themselves. The concept of this waterfall and the ability for us to potentially recoup the investment amount that we're proposing was an added bonus that, frankly, the developers are willing to go along with. Is actually something that they first thought of. And so I think that's a good thing. In the event that the property is sold and we don't recoup any of our money, we're still the benefactors of a wonderful project that is achieving the goals that I hopefully feel like I've described well. So I think it's a dual benefit. Competition, as Glenn said, we've tried really hard to curate the relatively small amount of retail square footage at Wonderblock in a way that's complementary to 25th Street and other places. First of all, retailers don't do redundancy, right? So we're going to be reliant upon their analysis to look at the market and determine where their store fits within the trade area. So we have that going for us. And then obviously our own efforts are meant to make that an environment that is conducive to existing businesses and augments the experience. Will there be competition? Absolutely. It's a capitalistic environment. And so there will be winners and losers like there always is. But from our perspective, we're being very sensitive to our existing businesses so that we create an environment that adds to and doesn't detract. I can't remember the question on density. We're not at all concerned about the capacity that downtown has to house density. There might be a tipping point sometime in our life, but it's not right now. And this is where density should live so that we can preserve our residential neighborhoods and our other parts of the town. And then the mixed use nature is, again, the best way to, enhance sustainability and utilize existing assets. Way better for water use, way better for air pollution. All of the things that we're proposing checks all of the boxes that you've heard people talk about tonight.
Let's get someone from JF, someone from this good hair zone to address the management experience piece. And then I think we're going to call it a night.
Yeah, the gray hair that I have, I've been in this industry for over 30 years, focused primarily on asset management and property management. So we've built over 4,500 apartment units that we self-manage. We've got a team of, right now, close to 75 people on our property management team. And we specialize and have experience in office, industrial, retail, and multifamily, all 4 product types. So I think our resume runs fairly deep in this area, and we look forward to managing this project too. So
I didn't say gray hair, I said good hair.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Okay, you guys, we're terribly sorry for such a late night. This is a hugely important topic. We're not going to shortchange it by doing this late again. Next week, we'll be starting at a much more reasonable hour and finishing at a more reasonable hour. And so bring your questions. We'll focus on parking next week. But if you have questions remaining from tonight's, bring them, and we'll have the good hair in the building. Okay. Motion to adjourn. Don't need one. We're in a work session. Okay, good night, everybody.